Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto built a harem with Yugao, Kushina and Mikoto? A forbidden destiny, powerful bonds, and a Naruto whose life changes forever. If you enjoy unique Naruto what if stories, like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin. What if Naruto build harem Kushina, Kurenai, May. Chapter 1 It begins. Kushina had just given birth when a masked man materialized directly in front of her and ripped the 9 tails out of her. Manato saw the condition that his wife was in and took her to the hospital. After that, he returned to the battlefield, or so she thought. Kushina was writhing in the hospital bed in pain. No one had ever survived a tailed beast extraction. She immediately froze when she heard 2 voices in the hallway. One voice belonged to her beloved husband and the other belonged to a voice that she did not recognize. The voices grew louder and louder as they approached the woman's room. "Minato, are you sure you want to use your son?" the unknown person asked. "It's the only way to ensure that the village has protection for life. No other village will mess with us since we will hold the most powerful tailed beast in existence," replied Minato. "You're right. I guess we have that masked man to thank. But what will Kushina do?" "She will never let you use Naruto," said the mysterious voice. "Why should we thank the masked man? I would have extracted the beast myself anyways. He just gave us someone to blame, and who cares what that bitch thinks? The only reason I married her was for this chance to get the 9-tailed fox. My real woman will raise Naruto with our own child when Kushina is dead." Minato replied. "But she isn't dead, she's just unconscious for now," the unknown voice stated. "For now, but she told me that no container has ever survived the extraction process before." Minato replied. Hearing all of this from the man she loved, Kushina began to tear up in bed. She should have listened when Sununade, Makoto, Yoshino and Hitomi told her that Minato was no good. She should have listened to them when they started noticing his adulterous behavior. He had the guts to hit on her friends while they were married. Now, the women weren't her friends anymore. The friendship was ruined due to her blind love towards the horrible man. "Minato, it's time, get Naruto now," said the voice as Minato walked over to take Naruto. As she heard his footsteps walking over to the cradle, something inside of her snapped. She was not going to let the betrayer take her child. She was not going to let Naruto die due to her husband's activities. No one was going to stop her from protecting her baby. Not even her own husband, Minato Namikaze, the Kage who single-handedly obliterated a majority of Iwa's forces in a few hours, would prevent her from protecting her baby to the very end. Kushina started to put her Kekkei Genkei into use. She used her adamantine chains to grab Minato's foot and threw him into the wall. "Gah!" the blonde-haired Kage yelled out. He looked up to see Kushina in her bed giving him a rage-filled glare. "Kushina-chan, what are you doing? I thought you were unconscious. Why did you attack me?" Minato demanded. "You bastard!" Kushina screamed, "How could you do this to me? Betray me like this? You used me. Naruto will not do anything for you as long as I am Al." Kushina was cut off by a blow to her neck from the person that she just could not identify. The man held a kunai and was about to finish the job until he heard footsteps in the hallway. "Minato, grab the boy. We have to leave now," he whispered loud enough only for Minato to hear. 2 hours later, Kushina woke up to an empty room. She sat up in her bed rubbing her neck as it was very sore. Suddenly, she started to regain memory of what transpired before she was knocked unconscious. No, she looked towards the cradle where Naruto was supposed to be only to realize that he was not there. "Naruto!" she screamed out as she started to unstrap her legs from the bed until someone ran into the room. "Calm down Kushina, you shouldn't stress yourself right now. It's not healthy for your body. Rest for now," a voice that she recognized ordered. Kushina looked up, she realized who it was. It was her ally Sununade of the Sannin. Sununade had a violet rhombus on her forehead. She has fair skin and brown eyes. Except for her bangs, which are parted in the middle and fall down the sides of her face, Tsunade's long, blonde hair is tied into 2 loose ponytails using purple bands. The same color as the seal on her forehead. She was wearing a grass-green robe with the kanji for Gamble Do, cake written in black on the back, inside of a red circle. Underneath she wore a gray, kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad, dark bluish-gray obi that matches her pants. Her blouse is closed quite low, revealing her sizable cleavage. She wears open-toed sandals with low heels and polish on both her fingernails and toenails. She also wears a soft pink lipstick and around her neck first Hokage's crystal necklace in clear view on her chest. How can I calm down when Minato stole my son? Right after he assaulted me. Kushina yelled. He did what? Sensei told me that you both decided to use Naruto in the sealing process. Sununade shouted. Sununade, that's not all he did, Kushina replied as she told Sununade what she heard of the conversation between Minato and the mystery man. I would kill him if he wasn't already dead, Sununade yelled. Sununade, where is my Naru-chan? I want to hold him, Kushina asked. I'm sorry Kushina, but sensei told me that he died during the sealing. Sununade said as she held her head down with tears coming out of her eyes. No, Kushina whispered. For Kushina, that was when her world ended. No way. You cannot tell me that he is dead. Never. Kushina screamed. Kushina she was cut off as Kushina screamed again. My baby. I didn't even get to hold him in my arms yet. I never got to even hear him laugh for the first time. Kushina sobbed. I didn't get to watch him grow up. I had a chance to, but that bastard ruined it. Kushina but she was cut off. Sununade, could you please, leave me alone? I just need time to myself right now. Kushina requested. Okay, but if you need anything just call, I'll be right next door. Sununade said as she walked away while Kushina cried herself to sleep. 30 minutes later, Kushina woke up to a female voice. Serves you right you bitch, you didn't even know that Manato didn't love you. He loves me and now that your piece of shit that you call a child is dead, my child will become the rightful heir of the Namikaze fortune. The woman boasted. Suddenly a chain shot out from Kushina's back and pierced the woman's stomach in an attempt to kill the unborn child. A banshee scream was heard through the village, alerting the Hokage as he jumped out of his chair, Yoshino who was gardening, Mikoto who was training and Hitomi who was heading to the Hyuga training grounds. They all headed to the hospital. They are all Anbu. I may not be able to kill that bastard, but I will kill his child like he killed mine. Kushina said in a cold voice as the chain retracted. Kushina started to bleed through her bandages. As she was about to fall someone caught her. She looked around to see that it was Sununade. Kushina, what happened in here? Sununade asked, but before Kushina could answer the Sandaime Hokage, Makoto, Yoshino, Hitomi and some nurses came in. What happened here? The Hokage asked as Makoto, Yoshino and Hitomi rush over to their friend as the nurse heads over to the down woman who was bleeding out. Kushina was about to speak when Sununade cut her off. She attacked Kushina while she was sleeping. Kushina was only defending herself. Sununade replied. Okay Sununade, come heal her before she and the baby dies, the Hokage said. I can't, if I don't heal Kushina she will die too. Because of the attack all of her wounds reopened. Sununade replied as she started healing Kushina. But you can't let the baby die, she is very important to this village. The Hokage said. But why is that sensei? Who is the baby's father? The mother isn't related to anyone powerful, so why is it more important than Kushina? The last loyal Uzumaki? Sununade asked. Well, forget about it. I'm sure the nurse can do it herself, the Hokage said as he quickly vanished. Why did you lie for me? You know that I was the one who attacked her. You will be in trouble when she wakes up, and tells the Hokage, Kushina said. And who will he believe? Now tell me, what caused you to attack her? Sununade asked as she finished healing her. She came in here to boast about her and Minato's child. Kushina said as she started to cry when she felt Makoto, Yoshino and Hitomi arms wrap around her. I'm sorry guys, I should have believed you. Kushina said as she cried into their arms. It's all right, Kushina, we are all friends here and will do everything we can to help you. Makoto spoke while Yoshiko and Hitomi nodded in agreement. 3 months later, Sununade entered the Hokage's office to see the Hokage's desk covered in paperwork. Behind the paperwork, you could see an old man cursing at the paperwork, wishing that it all could burn so that he didn't have to do it. I need some long-term missions with minimal stress in order to support the recovery of Kushina Uzumaki. Sununade requested. Why? She was released 2 months ago, she looked alright to me. The Hokage asked. Physically, yes. But that's not what I'm talking about. She tried to kill herself 3 times during the last 3 months, just to be with Naruto. I want to take her away from the bad memories that were created in this village. Sununade replied. I didn't know it was that bad. How long do you think it will take? And here, take as many as you can, the Hokage said as he gave the missions to her. I don't know sensei, I just don't know. Sununade said as she walked out of the Hokage's office, not seeing the smirk on his face. 10 years later. At the northern gates, 3 women walked through after being identified by the guards. A blonde, a redhead, and a raven-headed woman. Why do we have to come back here again? I don't want to be here anymore. Especially after what this village has done for me, Sununade. The woman with red hair spoke with venom in her voice. To visit your friends and pay your respects to your son Kushina, said the blonde now known as Sununade. Fine, said the redhead now known as Kushina as she ran off to visit her son's grave. I don't think it is wise to let her go on her own, said the raven-haired girl. Yes it is, Shizune, let her enjoy herself because I've been trying for years, to get her to come back and I still don't know why she chose now but I'm glad she did. Even though she's having second thoughts about it now, Sununade said as she looked at Shizune. She had matured into a beautiful woman. She had shoulder-length black hair with bangs and onyx-eyes, double C-cup and long luscious legs. She was wearing a long bluish-black kimono with white trimmings, held closed by a white obi, and open-toed sandals with low heels. A 10-year-old blonde-headed boy of short stature was walking around the outermost edges of Konoha, near the Uchiha district. Moving slowly in order to cool down from his most recent training exercise. The young blonde who was commonly known as Naruto was sporting a slightly oversized white t-shirt with an orange spiral emblazoned on it, coupled with a pair of dark blue shorts with a wide array of pockets on the sides. But amongst these physical traits the most striking amongst them was the matching set of whisker marks displayed starkly against his cheeks. He displayed them proudly, he didn't care what anyone else said. As Naruto was walking peacefully he couldn't help but notice out of the corner of his eye, a dark-clad figure lying motionless on the cold ground, in the middle of the warmest of days. A sharp gust of wind blew around causing a flurry of leaves and other such debris to float freely as if it was signifying an ominous presence. Regardless he ignored it, his mouth twisting into a wide grin as he imagined the fun he could have with the sleeping figure. Moving as quietly as possible Naruto crept towards the prone man and withdrew a pen from his back pocket, uncapping it with an audible pop. Caused him to cringe, slightly in fear that he had awoken the sleeping person. After a short time passed and he determined that he was undetected, he moved even closer preparing to draw on the man's face. Just as he was upon the man with his pen at the ready, he noticed something was off. The man's eyes were wide open, locked in a wide visage that could only be described as unmoving. Naruto froze when he saw this and started to mumble an apology to the man. "Ah, sorry, I was just, I'm sorry. No hard feelings, right?" the boy asked the man, not making eye contact. When he heard no response he looked at the man, expecting to see the cold fury that people always had on their faces after one of his jokes. Instead, the man was lying on the ground in exactly the same position he had been when Naruto first saw him. Is he sleeping with his eyes open? Naruto thought mildly, causing a sweat drop to form on the back of his head. Still searching for a prank to pull, Naruto settled for the old, kick them in the ribs and run like hell, gag. Naruto drew his leg back and delivered the hardest kick that he could muster to the sleeping man, causing him to fly roughly 5 feet away from his original and motionless position. Once again Naruto was presented with an oddity. He had expected the man to get up and chase him, instead he simply laid there, almost as if he hadn't felt the bone-bruising forces applied to him. Once more walking over to the prone figure, Naruto looked at the man's face in more detail, only to find that it was turning slightly blue. In a brief moment of clarity Naruto realized that the figure wasn't sleeping. Naruto was very naive for his age, mostly due to his age and general inexperience. However, it did not take much further inspection to determine that this man was in fact dead. Shocked at his discovery, Naruto turned around to run away, only to find his path blocked by another figure. This one was in an Anbu uniform. Naruto was frightened right then and there. He normally got blamed for things he didn't do, and this was something he didn't do. Hell, he didn't even know what happened, other than the fact that the guy was dead. It isn't what it looks like," he exclaimed quickly, "I just found him. I know exactly what it looks like." the Anbu said, walking over to the body. Naruto could see that the shinobi had dark black hair, much like the dead man had. Uchiha Shisui appears to have been suffocated or drowned, killed by Uchiha Itachi. The masked ninja replied, "That's awesome, how you can tell that just by looking at a dead body." Naruto exclaimed, glad that he wasn't being blamed for the death of the man. "How do you do that?" There was a pause for a moment, as the Anbu turned and looked at Naruto, his eyes turning from black to red, with 3 odd marks circling his pupils. "I am Itachi," he stated calmly. "Now that you have seen this, I cannot let you live," he said as he drew his sword. Naruto turned to run, but was stopped when the cold metal of an Anbu sword cut through his stomach. The sword was quickly removed, before it was once again slid through his body. Naruto let out a scream, only to find it muffled by the hand of the Anbu. As Naruto slid to the ground, he was rolled over. Before he lost consciousness, he saw the ninja take out a kunai. Then everything went black. Then Itachi went over to Shisui when he felt a strong charka signal coming towards him. "Shit, I'm not strong enough to take on that person, I have to get out of here," Itachi said as he vanishes, not before he kicks the body in the river, planning to look for it later. Kushina was coming from the grave of her son and was going to visit her friend Mikoto, when she saw a boy that had blonde hair and looked like Minato. But he had whiskers on his face. She looked at him and realized that he was bleeding from his stomach and his slashed out eyes, and then she started to laugh. "Cuckoo serves you right, you Minato spawn. Looks like I didn't kill you that day, but you're going to die anyway," Kushina said as she walked away but stopped. Something in her heart told her that she should save him. After all, it wasn't the boy's fault that Minato cheated on her. At the hospital. As Kushina entered the hospital, she was attacked by the same screaming banshee that she stabbed 10 years. "You killed my baby. Now I am going to kill you," she yelled as she attacked Kushina with an injection needle, but Kushina kept dodging the crazy woman's swipes. "What are you talking about? Your son's still alive in my hands," Kushina replied as she continued to dodge the poisonous weapon. "That demon is not my child. You killed my baby," she yelled, but a fist to the face by Kushina knocked her out. Kushina did not know why she had punched the woman, but she felt like the woman deserved it. If he is not that woman's child, then who is he? Kushina's thought before she was interrupted by a nurse. "Naruto. Is he alright?" the girl asked. "I'm not sure, I found him near the Uchiha compound," Kushina said. Then she looked good at the girl before her. "Rin, is that you?" Kushina asked. "Yes it is, but I can't talk now. I have to take Naruto to the Rin said as she told Naruto from Kushina. "Naruto. Why would that boy be named after my dead son? He also looks like him. What is going on here?" Kushina thought. "Excuse me, nurse. What is that boy's last name?" Kushina asked. "You mean the demon boy?" she asked with venom in her voice. "Answer my question," Kushina said back with a little ki leaking. "I said his last name was Uzumaki," the nurse said as she ran away. "Naruto Uzumaki. He even has my last name. What the hell is going on?" Kushina shouted in her mind. Then she saw Sununade. "Sununade, what are you doing here? Sensei asked me to save a boy that was attacked today. Why are you here?" Sununade asked. "I'm the one who found the boy. Say Sununade, could you do me a favor? Could you do a DNA test on the boy?" Kushina asked. "Why?" she asked. "Because he looks too much like my son. The only difference is that he has blonde hair now," Kushina replied. "But Kushina, your son is dead," Sununade said. "I know, but please, it will help me find some peace," Kushina replied with tears in her eyes. "Okay," Sununade said as she entered the ER. "Kushina, what are you doing here?" the Hokage asked as he just arrived. "Didn't Sununade tell you I was here?" Kushina said. "Yes she did, but why are you at the hospital?" the Hokage replied. "I was the one who saved the boy," Kushina said. "Shit," the Hokage thought, "thanks for saving him." "Hokage-sama, why does that boy have my last name?" Kushina asked. The Hokage was sweating bullets, but he was saved by a nurse who called him. Sununade and Rin was working hard trying to save Naruto, when red chakra started leaking out of his body and healing his wounds. "Shit, we have to stop this," Sununade shouted. "Why? It will heal him faster," Rin asked. "That may be true, but if it heals his eyes before we get a replacement, he will be blind for the rest of his life," Sununade said as she put a seal on Naruto. "You're right. But how long before the seal wears out?" Rin asked. An hour. Sununade replied. You there, get the replacement eyes from the medical bay. Rin yelled as the nurses run out. Uchiha compound. Mikoto had just come from a mission to see dead bodies all over the place. Oh my god, who could have done this? Mikoto said as tears came out of her eyes. Then she remembered her children. Sasuke, Inika, Mikoto shouted as she ran into the house to see both Sasuke and Inika on the ground. She ran over to them, thinking the worst until she checked them herself. They were only unconscious. Shit, why did Itachi had to go on that month-long mission? Thank God, Makoto said as she creates a shadow clone to take up Sasuke while she took up Inika. On her way to the hospital, when she saw something flowing in the river, as she went closer she realized who it was. Shisui. Makoto yelled as she put down Inika and rushed out to fish out the body. When she turned over the body she saw a cut near Shisui's eyes. Someone was trying to steal his eyes. Shisui, who could have done this to you? With your mastery of genjutsu I'm surprised you lost. Makoto said as she took out his eyes. Can't let anybody get their hands on these. Makoto said as she sealed them away and went back to Inika and took off to the hospital. At the hospital, Makoto had just dropped off her children. They were going to be alright. Sasuke had great mental strain and no one could tell her what was causing this and was just knocked out. As Makoto was using the bathroom she heard someone talking. Can you believe Tsunade-sama want to save that demon? Said a nurse. Yes, she had the nerves to send me to retrieve replacement eyes for that demon brat. He could go blind for all I care. Said nurse 2. Yeah, it'll be easier to kill him now. Said nurse 1 as they both laughed. Then a kunai went through the skull of nurse 1. Nurse 2 started screaming until Makoto appeared and pushed her kunai in her stomach. Where is the medical bay? Makoto interrogated. Ha ha ha, it doesn't matter if you find it because not even with your speed, the demon only has a few seconds remaining before he is blind forever. She did get to finish as Makoto pushed the kunai farther, killing her. Shit, she is right, I need to do something. Makoto said. She then suddenly thought, Shisui would have wanted you to have it, Naruto-kun. She suddenly towards the and ran. When Makoto arrived at the door to the some nurses tried to stop her, but Makoto was a ninja so she just shined right behind them. Kushina came from the lunchroom to see someone dodging the nurses. Where is she going? Thought Kushina. What the hell has taken so long, Kimiko? We only have a couple of seconds remaining. Rin asked. She's dead. Said Makoto as she entered the room. What are you doing here? Sununade asked. We will talk later. Take these eyes. Makoto said as she unsealed the eyes. But these eyes have. Rin was cut off by Sununade. She will explain later. Sununade said as she took the eyes from Makoto and started the surgery. I will come and check on him later. Makoto said as she vanishes in a puff of smoke. 2 weeks later in the the next thing that Naruto knew, he was lying in a bed in a hospital bed. He tried to open his eyes, but found that he was stopped by something covering them. Reaching up to touch his eyes, he felt the coarse but soft texture of gauze. Suddenly he was racked with a fit of pain as the adrenaline of his awakening wore off. He groaned and winced in pain. It wasn't until someone spoke up that he realized someone was in the room. Naruto-kun, it is good to see you are awake. Said Rin. Rin-chan, what happened? Naruto managed to groan out while he winced. It would seem that you were attacked by someone and left for dead. Rin said. You were found by a woman named Kushina. Rin-chan, what's with my eyes? Naruto interrupted Rin. Although he couldn't see it, Rin cringed before she answered. I was about to explain that. It seems that for whatever reason, someone damaged your eyes beyond our healing abilities. Rin said. This elicited a gasp of shock from Naruto. Does this mean I'm blind? He asked, through gasps of breath. He began to cry at the prospect of never being able to see again. No, Rin said. Thanks to Makoto-sama and Tsunade-sama, a famous medic ninja, she was able to transplant Shisui's eyes into you. It is very rare indeed, but it was vital to your survival that every place that blood could leak out from was plugged. That included your eyes. I have some dead guy's eyes in my head. Naruto yelled. Yes, Naruto-kun, I suppose you do. Rin chuckled. Naruto, those eyes are very special. They hold the bloodline limit of the Uchiha clan. What is it? Naruto asked. It's a special ability that is passed down through someone's family. It is the Sharingan. Rin explained. Wow, that's cool. Naruto replied. Naruto-kun, I also found out that your whole body is adapting and changing from the genes in the eye. For all we know you could have a totally different dojutsu, Rin said. Naruto just lay in bed digesting all of the new information he had just learned. Naruto, did you see who did this? Rin asked as Naruto describes the man. Shit, it was Itachi. Mikoto-sama won't like this. Rin-chan, how long was I out for? Did anything happen? He asked. To answer your first question, you were unconscious for about 2 weeks. Now, Naruto, the second thing is pretty bad. Itachi, that is the name of the man that attacked you. He murdered his entire family except for his little brother, Sasuke, sister Anika and mother Makoto. Rin said in a sad voice. This means that there are only a few people left in the world with the same kinds of eyes you have. Naruto just sat there in silence. He didn't know what to do. He was only 10 for crying out loud, and he just found out that he had some dead guy's eyes in his head, and the dead guy's family was dead. This day just couldn't get any weirder. He fell asleep with those thoughts. Oh, how wrong he was. After checking up on Naruto, Sununade made her way back to her room. She had a meeting to conduct with her sensei, and it wasn't going to be good. As she entered her room, she saw Rin waiting for her. She was holding a standard medical file, with all of the information they could gain from Naruto while he was unconscious. Everything seems to be fine, Tsunade-sama. Rin said. There is one interesting thing. You know he was an orphan, right? Tsunade just nodded. Well, I ran a DNA test like you asked with some extra blood samples we had, and well, you should look at them yourself. She handed Tsunade the folder. When she opened it, she stared at a complete genetic profile of the blonde. However, what grabbed her attention was the report that Rin had written up. Kushina was right, Tsunade said. Who else has seen this? She demanded. Only you and I have seen the report. She stated, calmly. Tsunade began to massage her temples as she felt a migraine coming on. Do you know how this could have happened? Tsunade asked. I have no idea, although I shudder to think of how she'll take this. Rin said. Tsunade's office. Hey Tsunade, is it him? She asked, a look of excitement passing through her purple eyes. Yes Kushina, it's him. Tsunade said. Kushina's eyes grew wide at those words, and she collapsed into a chair, grasping her breath and shaking her red hair in such a manner and started to cry as Rin comforted her. Then her mood changed. So, you're saying, that my Sochi-kun is alive. But the Hokage told me he was dead. Kushina yelled, through ragged breaths. Why? Why did he lie to me then? She demanded. I don't know Kushina, but let's ask the Hokage. Tsunade suggested. Hospital. As they arrive at Naruto room they saw the Hokage about to go in. You bastard. Kushina yelled as she withdrew her katana and attacked the Hokage, but he blocked it with his staff. Kushina, what is the meaning of this? The Hokage said as he dodged a slash at his head. You lied to me, you told me my son was dead. When he was really alive. Kushina said as she took another swing at the Hokage. But, your son really is dead. Hokage said while dodging again. No, he is not, he is the boy I rescued 2 weeks ago, Kushina replied. Know that not your son, that boy is an orphan, your eyes are playing tricks on you, Hokage said. Orphan? My Rin did a DNA, and it proved that he is my son, Kushina yelled. Is that true? The Hokage asked Rin. Yes Hokage-sama, Rin replied. I didn't. Kushina know if I did, the Hokage as he dodges another slash thrown at him. Don't lie to me, how could you not know? Kushina yelled as her kanata stated to glow, Devil's Play G. Shit, I'm dead, the old Hokage said. Kushina, wait, hear me out, when your son was born, he had red hair, right? The third asked. Yes, straight red hair and my purple eyes. Kushina replied, but her kanata was still glowing. Danzo came to me with 2 boys, one of them had blonde hair and blue eyes, whisker marks, and the other was a straight red hair, no whisker marks with purple eyes, but the red hair was dead. Plus, I saw the body get buried myself, so did many other people. The third replied. Don't lie to me, Kushina yelled. Kushina, I had no intention of lying to you about this. The third said. Then why didn't you tell me about the next boy? I could have taken care of him, Kushina replied. Why would you? The third asked. Because of that Tem ruining his life. It was the least I could have done. Kushina replied. Why do you hate your husband so much? He was only trying to save the village. The third asked when he felt her ki increase. Don't ever call him that. Now he is nothing to me. Kushina fired back as she punched the wall, destroying it, and walked away. I am going to see Danzo, right now. Kushina demanded. There's no way that I'm letting him get away with this. I'm going to kill him. Kushina yelled. No, let me handle Danzo. The third said. I want to see him now. Kushina shouted. No. As your Hokage, I order you to stop now. The third yelled as Kushina walked up to his face. You can always try, old man. Kushina said as she shattered the glass and appeared behind him and about to swing her kanata at his head, when Sununade caught her hand. Shit. She is a lot faster than before. Thank you, Sununade, Hokage thought. Kushina, stop. If you attacking the Hokage, you will be executed and you will never see your son again. Sununade said. You're right. I going to see my son. Kushina said as she went into his room. Thank you, Sununade. The third said. I didn't do it for you, I did it for Kushina and her son, Sununade said as she entered the room followed by the Rin. Naruto, room. Kushina's face was a mixture of emotions. Happy and sad were interchanged with anger and fury. She was grateful for the chance to be a part of her son's life, sad that he had been hospitalized in critical condition for the past 2 weeks, and angry at Danzo for what he did as she looked at her sleeping son. Kushina, I have something to show you, said a voice. What is it, Shizune? Kushina replied. Kushina, in the DNA results, Rin found some very interesting information. It seems that Naruto has a large number of genetic markers, in common with an Uchiha as well as Minato and yourself. Shizune said. This elicited a loud gasp from Sununade and a blank look from Kushina. Are you saying that my Sochi-kun has my bloodline as well as that Tem? She questioned. Yes, I am, but his fat. Rin was cut off by a growl from Kushina. Sorry, I never knew the Namakazes had a bloodline. The Tem never liked to talk about it because it skipped his generation. It was the legendary dojutsu, the Rinnegan. The rest of the occupants in the room gasped. Then Rin continued after getting her voice back. You see, during Hisso, Itachi damaged his eyes so badly that they had to be removed. When you found him and with the help of Makoto-sama, Tsunade was able to transplant the eyes of Uchiha Shisui to stem the large amount of blood loss he was experiencing. So the genes in the eye were absorbed and modified. Though what's weird is that the results we are getting is that the eye is mutating as well. So with the information you just gave me, it's possible that Naruto awakened both the Rinnegan and Sharingan and merged them with your bloodline. Rin said. Wait, what about the Kyuubi? Does that mean that he is part demon or something? Tsunade asked, shocked at Rin's analytical analysis of Naruto's abilities. My son isn't a demon, it must be the side effect of having the demon sealed in him. Kushina said, glaring at the Sannin. Calm down, you two. Shizune said. If what Rin said is correct, Naruto must be subjected to someone's DNA to change. Since the Kyuubi is sealed inside of him, then there is no fear of him becoming a demon. Besides, we have a full DNA write-up. He's 100% human, only just like Kushina with instant regeneration, senses beyond that of Ninken and possibly, immortality. But, what's to stop someone from putting their blood into him? He'll keep on changing, and that won't be good. Kushina worried that her son may end up a power-hungry fiend. I believe that the ability is either fading, or slowing down completely just like it did with Kushina, because he adopted the genes of the Kyuubi within a matter of minutes. But this time it took almost the entire 2 weeks he was unconscious for the changes to occur. Do you have those reports, Shizune? Rin asked. Hi. His DNA had been slowly changing over the period of the past 2 weeks, and the changes were mostly minimal. I would need to run more tests, but I think that this ability is either being overridden in his own DNA, or it is being stopped as to prevent further damaging Naruto. Shizune deduced. Now, said Rin, what do you say about meeting your son? Had they not turned to wake up Naruto, they would have noticed the face with yellow eyes watching them as it licked its lips and laughed. Naruto-kun, you will be mine soon. It said before it vanishes. Chapter 2 Traitors. Back at the hospital in Naruto's room. They put up privacy seal. Naruto, wake up, Rin said as she shake him. Rin-chan, is that you? Naruto said as he stood up. Yes, it's me, Rin replied. Is it time to take this blindfold off? Naruto asked. Yes, it is time, Rin said as he took off the blindfold and the light entered his eyes, blinding for a second. When his Sharingan eye in the form of Shisui Mangekyo Sharingan adapted to the light, he looked around and saw three of the most beautiful women he had ever seen, a blonde hair one, a black hair one, and finally a red head. Who are you? Naruto asked. Naruto, this Tsunade, the one I told you about, Rin replied as she pointed to the blonde one. Thanks Tsunade-sama, Naruto replied. Don't worry about Naruto, Tsunade said. And this is her apprentice Shizune, Rin said as she pointed to the black hair one. Nice to meet you Shizune-san, Naruto said. You too Naruto-san, Shizune replied. And this Kushina, she is the one that saved you, Rin said, pointed to the red head. Thank you Kushina-san for saving me, even though a monster like me doesn't deserve it, Naruto replied sadly. Why do you think you are a monster? Kushina asked as tear fell down her cheek. That's what the villagers say to me as they beat me, Naruto said as all the women began to cry. Why is this woman crying? Kushina could take it anymore and she lounges at him. Sochi, I'm sorry, if I knew you were alive I would have stayed and protected you, Kushina said as she cried on Naruto. Hey, stop that. I don't know you lady, and stop calling me your son because I won't fall for that again, Naruto said as he pushed her away. That made Kushina cry even harder. I am your mother, Kushina replied. You are not my mother. I heard my mother was a whore, who abandoned me just so she could spread her legs for strange men. Naruto shouted. That made Kushina cried even harder. Naruto, she really is your mother. Rin shouted. So it was true, you really did abandon me. Naruto shouted as he lounges at Kushina but was caught by some chains. Let me go you bitch, I don't want anything to do with you. Naruto shouted. Please Sochi, give me a chance to explain myself. I love you, said a crying Kushina. No, Naruto shouted. Naruto, stop, she thought you were dead. She didn't abandon you. Tsunade shouted, comforting a crying Kushina. Why should I believe you? Naruto replied. Because I believe her, Rin said she, which shocked Naruto. Rin-chan, I thought you were on my side, Naruto said. I am, just listen to her story before you judge her, Rin replied as Naruto looked at her. Give her a chance, said a voice. Fine, Naruto muttered. He know Rin was right, he could at least hear her out. Thank you Sochi, Kushina said and explained herself. So you think the Hokage lied to you, Naruto replied as Kushina nodded her head. I don't believe that the old man would ever do that to me. He is always the one that saves me from the mob. Naruto shouted. Naruto, calm down, and think about it. I don't want to believe, but it's true, Rin said. Naruto started thinking about it when he remembered how the Hokage always came after the mob had beaten him. He would have them arrested, then he would give the Naruto the speech on how he should forgive them. The worst of all was that the people that had beaten him was freed the next day, and when he asked the Hokage about it, he changed the subject, or say, there was no witness to support the case. Then he would wake up in his apartment not knowing how he got there. Naruto started to cry. He could not believe the old No, the Hokage could do that to him, as the tears came down. Rin and Shizune pushed Kushina towards him to comfort him. She went over and put her arms around Naruto and pulled him into her chest. Mom, I am so sorry for doubting you. I don't deserve your love, Naruto said. Don't worry Naruto-kun, mommy will always love you, Kushina said while she begins to cry too. She held him as if her life depended on it. I am so sorry Naruto-kun, she repeat. Suddenly she sensed a powerful Ki coming towards her. Her chain came out of the ground, capturing a raven hair woman in a bird cage. You bitch, stay away from Naruto, said a voice as she attacks Kushina, who easily dodges it. Makoto-chan, why are you attacking me? Kushina asked. Don't Makoto-chan me you bitch, you abandoned Naruto, Makoto shouted as she attacks Kushina again, who dodges again. No, I didn't, now stop attacking me and let me explain, Kushina replied, but Makoto wasn't listening. Miko-chan, stop, Naruto shouted. But Naruto, she was cut off. Let her explain, Naruto replied. Fine, Makoto said as she listens to Kushina's story. Just answer me one question, did you get my letters? Makoto asked. What letters? Asked a surprised Kushina. So the Hokage lied to me, he told me you got my letters, Makoto replied. The only things we got was mission scrolls and nothing else, Tsunade said. What was in those letters? Kushina asked. When we first saw Naruto he acts like you and had your last name, so we thought he was your son, but when we asked the Hokage he denied our claims. saying it was just a coincidence, and when we asked where you were he said that you didn't want anybody to know where you were. So we drop it. 2 months after observing him we decided to send you a letter by putting it in the mission scroll, but we got no response, so after a year of trying we gave up, Makoto said. So why didn't you adopt him? Kushina asked. The Hokage, and our husbands would stop us, so we decided to protect him from the shadows, Makoto replied. Damn it Hokage, you are always ruining my life, one day you will pay, Naruto thought. So who did this to Naruto-kun? Mikoto asked, but they all hesitant until Rin told her everything. Right before Naruto could say anything, Mikoto was in front of Naruto and crushing in between her valley of her DD. Mikoto was a very beautiful woman, long raven hair, slim shapely body and lovely, although she was in her late 30s, but she looks like a woman in her late 20s. Are you alright? Mikoto asked with tears in her eyes. I'm okay Mikoto-chan, Naruto said as he hugged her back. How can it be okay when my son did this to you? Mikoto said, still crying. Mikoto-chan, please stop crying, I hate to see a beautiful woman cry. I'm okay, Naruto replied as he started rubbing her back. Mikoto blushed instantly and stopped crying. If you say so Naruto-kun, Mikoto said in his warm embrace. Then they were interrupted when they heard Rin's cough. Rin coughed. We have a problem, the old man will soon arrive. What should we do? We will act like everything is okay, Kushina said as everybody nodded their heads in agreement. But what about Naruto's eyes? We can't let them see them. We don't know what they will do, Shizune asked. You're right, Rin replied. Leave that to me, Kushina said as she channeled her chakra into her hands as she touched Naruto's stomach. Please protect Naruto-kun, as Naruto's eyes turned back to his normal blue eyes. Kushina, did you just use K? Sununade was cut off by Makoto's hand. After more planning on how they will be acting when the Hokage came in later. The Hokage walked in and heard. It's good see you Ka-chan, you look beautiful. I really like your long red hair, I wonder what I look like with your hair, said Naruto, missing Kushina's blush. Thank you Sochi, said Kushina. Sununade then introduced herself, then gave him a hug, crushing him her big beautifuls while Naruto hugged her back and rest his face into making him blush. Seeing this, Kushina, Shizune and Rin started to laugh. The boy has good taste, said the Hokage, surprising them. Yeah right, while blood started to leak out of his nose. Sununade saw this and a vein started to twitch on her forehead, then you could hear the scream of the Hokage as he was flying across the village. When the Sandaime returned from his trip, Rin told Naruto everything during the operation, leaving out everything they don't want the Hokage to know. Long story short, Naruto was shocked. They talked some more before Naruto fell asleep, then they left. After they left, a figure came out of the shadows and poured something in a sleeping Naruto mouth. Soon Naruto, you will be mine, ku, then it sank back into the shadows. 2 days later. Where do you live? Kushina asked. Naruto led her to the apartment. The old man said that it was the best he could get, he said. Kushina looked at the apartment in disbelief. You're joking, right? She asked. No, come look. Naruto led her into the apartment. He opened the door and Kushina looked around. I don't have anything besides a bed, a few chairs and a refrigerator I found around in the village, Naruto told her. Kushina walked around the apartment barely holding her anger. I am going to kill those bastards, she growled as she walked up to the refrigerator that looked like it had been through a war and opened it and saw some milk and ramen. These expire last year. They won't sell me anything fresh no matter where I go unless Mikoto or Rin-chan is with me, and they can't always be with me, so I just have to buy them. Well, it won't happen again because I am here now, Kushina said as she walked up to Naruto and hugged him. 3 years later. Uzumaki compound. They lived in a mansion on a vast estate neighboring the Hyugas. They were wealthy because of all the money she made on her missions. She even built a garden behind the house after an incident where they were almost poisoned. Kushina went on a rampage, destroying stall that belongs to the vendors that sold them the food before killing them. It took the combined effort of her friend Makoto, Hitomi and Yoshino to calm her down. The Hokage had called her into his office after that and asked her why she had done that to the vendors who were no real threat to her. Kushina almost blew a gastric and attacked the Hokage, but her friends held her back before she replied that if poisoning them wasn't a threat then she did knew what was, and she even told the Hokage that if she caught any uninvited guest on her property then she won't hesitate to kill them even if it was him. Throughout those years Kushina trained Naruto in anything and everything that she knew and what his body can handle. When she was done she wanted Naruto to be able to protect himself when she had to go on a mission. 2 years later, Naruto entered the classroom and introduced himself to the class before the teacher told him to take a seat. As Naruto walked up the stairs he could feel the ki coming from some of the students but he ignored them and took his seat beside a Hyuga who had the usually Hyuga stare. "Hi, my name is Naruto, do mind if I sit?" Naruto asked but she just looked at him and she just ignored him. "So this is Kushina's son?" The girl had a confused look on her face. "Mom told me to try and make friends with him but dad told me not to. Who should I listen to?" "So this is Hitomi-chan daughter?" Naruto looked at her. She has dark blue hair which reached her back and fair skin, a traits that she inherited from her Hitomi. It's a shame she doesn't have Hitomi personality. Naruto was about to ask her something when a raven-haired girl approached him. "Naruto Uzumaki," she asked. "Mom was right, he is cute. It's shame dad forbid me from visit him when mom does." "Yes, that's me," Naruto replied as he looked at the girl with raven-color hair which reached her shoulders and black eyes. "She looks just like Mikoto-chan and she is so friendly." "Then come with me," she replied as she puts out her hands. "The teacher is glaring at us," Naruto said as the girl looked at the teacher before turning back to him. "I'm an elite Uchiha, I don't answer to anybody," the girl replied. "I see, but I am okay with my seat," Naruto said. "I don't want a cute guy like you getting corrupted by this Hyuga bitch," the Uchiha said. Hearing this the Hyuga turned around. "What did you call me?" the Hyuga girl asked. "Are you deaf? I call you a bit." The Uchiha did finish as a palm thrust hit her in her stomach sending her across the room crashing into a desk knocking her out. The teacher rushes her to the school hospital but not before he gave the Hyuga girl detention after class. After class, as the Hyuga came from detention she was suddenly surrounded by 10 boys about a year older. "So the great Anika Uchiha could not fight me herself so she decided to bring back up," the Hyuga said as she got into a fighting stance. "I don't need them to beat you Hana Hyuga but I don't want to get myself dirty," the Uchiha now known as Anika said as she looked at the boys. "Get her. Bring it on," the Hyuga known as Hana shouted as she fought them off as much as possible until they finally overpowered her. They held her down and started ripping off her clothes. "Hey guys, stop that." Anika realizing that the guys were taking it too far but they ignored her. "Kukukik finally Hyuga bitch, I can do what I wanted to do with you the first time I saw you," a boy said as he ripped off her panties. "You always thought you were better than us," said another as he ripped off her bra. "Stop this, it's not what I wanted." Anika yelled as she kicks one of boys off Hana but the rest overpowered her. Now she was in the same position as Hana. "Finally I get to sample a Hyugas," one of the boys said. "Yeah, and I get to sample an Uchihas," another boy said while the rest hold down both girls. The girls are side by side, as the girls scream for someone to help them. Some of students heard the girls scream but when they saw that it was a Hyuga and Uchiha they just ignore them. That what they get for being stuck up bitches. The two boy took out their and was about to enter them when suddenly there fell to the ground, wind release wind blade. "What the hell?" The other turned around to see Naruto glaring at them. "Who wants to be next?" Naruto said in a cold voice as he ran through some more seal, wind R. "Kya!" the boys shouted as they ran off. "Are you girls alright?" Naruto said as he walked up to the girls only for the girls tackle him to the ground and began to cry on his shoulders while Anika keep on apologizing to Hana. "Hana, I sorry, I never meant it to go this far," Anika said. "Why should I forgive you?" Hana said as she lifts her head out of Naruto embrace. "I know we never see eye to eye before but I am sorry for what happened to you," Anika said as she cried even more. She did come to her senses and try to stop them. "Hana, fine, but trust is something that you earn." "Thank you Hana," Anika said then she put out her hands. "Can we start over and be friends? My name is Anika Uchiha," as Hana accepted it. "Hana Hyuga, nice to meet you," Hana said then they both turned to Naruto as he put his hands on top of theirs. "Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto said as they removed their hands. Hana walked up to Naruto and kisses him on his cheeks. "What was that for?" a shocked Naruto asked as a blush appeared on his face. "For saving my life," Hana replied and before he could say anything another lips attaches itself to his other cheek. It was Anika. "Thanks for saving my life too Naruto-kun," Anika said with a blush on her face. This day was the start of a beautiful friendship between the two girls and the love war over Naruto. 1 year later, Naruto was coming from training late at night when out of nowhere he heard the sound of chirping birds, Chidori. He turned around to see a goat mask and that was the last thing he saw and heard. That was for my teacher. Mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself in a wet, decrepit, sewer-like hallway. Leaking pipes hung from the ceiling over his head and the water on the floor went up to his knees. Naruto suddenly found himself in front of a massive cage. The bars must have been over 100 feet in height, but there was no lock on them. Instead there was a piece of white paper with the kanji for seal on it in black. Well, so my container comes to greet me. I was wondering when you would be coming here. Naruto felt the ground tremble as he heard the loud voice. He looked into the cage as steam began to come out from between the bars. Naruto's eyes widened as a toothy grin appeared along with a set of glowing crimson orbs. So, to what do I owe this pleasure, little one? Naruto looked up at the creature as more of its body was revealed. Kei Kyuubi no wa Yoko. The Kyuubi smiled as it winked at Naruto. Correct, you aren't as dumb as I thought you were, The smirk on Kyuubi's features made the blonde incredibly nervous. Suddenly the Kyuubi began to shrink as it began to take a new form. When the Kyuubi finished its transformation, there was a human figure lying on the ground. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw it, or rather her features. She had crimson red hair that fell to the small of her back, she had a pale complexion, long slender arms, a perfect hourglass figure, and an impressive set of. She looked to be about 15 years old. As she stood up she revealed her whole form, completely. Naruto blushed crimson red as he stared into her crimson eyes. So, do you like what you see? Naruto did not know whether it was her looks in general, or if it was how she said it, but he did the first thing that seemed logical, he fainted. If you people are having any trouble with Kyuubi's human form, just think Kurumu from Rosario Vampire with crimson hair and red slit eyes. Good you are awake, Kyuubi said. Naruto seemed puzzled for a moment. Where am I? Kyuubi's sweat dropped. We're currently inside your mind, you were attacked. Oh. Naruto looked around. So what now? We can hang out while I heal you. Kyuubi and they talk. He found out her name and how she became the Kyuubi, but she did not tell him why she attacked the village. Finally I finish healing you Naruto-kun, Kurumu said. Thanks Kurumu-hime, Naruto replied as he hugged her as she blushes. You welcome Naruto-kun, Kurumu said as she crushes him into her DD making him blush. Can we talk again? Naruto said as he let go of her. Any time you want just come visit me, Kurumu replied. Good night, Kurumu-hime, and with that Naruto vanishes. Kurumu smiled. Good night, Naruto-kun. Real World Hospital. Naruto woke up to see Kushina in his bed as Naruto sits up. The movement wake up Kushina. Naruto-kun thank God, Kushina said as she hugs him, but he did not respond. Mother and son looked at each other for a moment. Naruto sighed. When were you going to tell me about Kurumu? So he finally met her, Kushina. I was planning to tell you sometime before you became a genin. It's okay mom, Naruto said with a smile on his face. So you are not mad? Kushina asked. Nope, it is the best thing that ever happens to me, Naruto replied as he hugs her. Anyway, who attacked you? Kushina asked. I can't remember, Naruto replied. Okay, but from now on I will increase your training, Kushina said. The next day. Naruto, I would like to introduce you to your new secret senseis. For Kenjutsu would be Yugao, for Taijutsu would be Guy, for Genjutsu, and for Ninjutsu. Kushina said. Why can't you, Mikoto, Yoshino and Hitomi teach me? Naruto asked. Because none of us have the time right now, Kushina replied. Okay, who do I have tomorrow? Naruto asked. That will be me, my very youthful friend, Guy shouted. That was the day that Naruto met a man that would haunt Naruto dreams. As they was about to leave, Kushina asked Guy to stay a minute. If my son comes back dressing and acting like you, I will show you how youthful my Kanata is, Kushina said to a now scared Guy. The next day at Guy's dojo. Maida Guy sat in the middle of the dojo room as Naruto entered wearing his required uniform. You're on time, Guy spoke sternly making Naruto nod. So what will you teach me? Naruto asked. Nothing, Guy replied. What do you mean by nothing? Naruto yelled. I mean nothing yet. Every day after school on Mondays you will be running around the village 100 times on your hands, 100 sit-ups, 100 one-hand push-ups, 200 wall clinking pull-ups and push-ups while wearing 100 pounds of weight, Guy replied as he gave Naruto the weight suit to put on. Are you crazy? Naruto yelled back. Make it 200 inches, Guy said. Stop complaining and do it, Kurumu said. Fine, Naruto replied. 5 months later, Naruto got used to all of Guy's crazy workout. You are here early, Guy said as Naruto nodded. Good, now I can tell you about the 8 gates. Naruto now sat on the floor in front of Guy. Now for the required period to learn the 8 gates is 5 months. In 1 week I will see how many gates you can open and that's when I know it's your limit. You do not go beyond that limit until I tell you, understand? Guy looked serious as Naruto nodded back as they started the session. For the first lesson I will tell you about the 8 gates. Naruto nodded. The 8 gates are 8 specific points on a person's chakra pathway system. They limit the overall flow of chakra within a person's body. Guy lectured as he carried on. The basis for the idea of the chakra gates comes from the body's limits on the functions within it. This makes the body much weaker, but it keeps the body from expiring too soon. In order to avoid this, one has to undergo intense training. To open these gates allows the user to surpass their own physical limits at the cost of extreme damage to their own bodies. Do you get me so far, Naruto? The Uzumaki nodded as he absorbed everything. Now let's get into detail to what these 8 gates are. Guy got up now as he started to walk around Naruto, who still sat. First is the gate of opening. This is located in the brain. This gate removes the restraints of the brain on the muscles so 100% of their strength can be used, whereas normally, a person can only use 20% of their muscles' strength to keep them from disintegrating. Unlocking this gate allows the user to use the front lotus. Naruto nodded as Guy moved on. Second is the gate of healing. This is also located in the brain. This gate forcibly increases one's physical strength and temporarily re-energizes the body. Third is the gate of life. This is located on the spinal cord. It allows the user to use the reverse lotus. The increased blood flow turns the skin red. Fourth is the gate of pain. This is located on the spinal cord. This gate increases the user's speed and power, and result it may cause muscle tissue to tear up. Fifth is the gate of limit. Increases the user's speed and power. This is located in the abdomen. Sixth is the gate of view. Increases the user's speed and power. This is located in the stomach. Seventh is the gate of wonder, for above this is located below the stomach. This gate will turn you into an almost unstoppable powerhouse. Eighth is the gate of death, this located at the heart. Releasing this gate uses up all of the body's energy. It makes the heart pump at maximum power and exceeds the power of every other gate. Opening this gates the user's death shortly after. Together they are the 8 gates. Guy now sat on the floor again. Any questions, Naruto? Naruto listened intently as he nodded and asked one important question. Can you use techniques when you are using the 8 gates? Guy shook his head negatively. Impossible. The 8 gates is the ultimate form of taijutsu. Using ninjutsu will kill you because of the amount of chakra that is leaked out thanks to the 8 gates. Naruto frowned. Okay, do we start learning it now? Guy nodded as he got back up. Yes, we have time. I will see how many gates you can open when the training is over. Naruto nodded as he got up with Guy. Guy then walked forward towards outside. Come Naruto, let's begin. Naruto smiled as he walked after his teacher. He will have to show his determination. 5 months later. A 16-year-old Naruto is wearing a black cloak with red flames around the whirlpool symbol on it. Under it there he is wearing anbu cloths. He is walking home with Hana to his left and to his right Anika. Hana is wearing the traditional but tight hyuga clothes to show off her curvy figure, C-cup in her long beautiful hair. Anika is wearing a female version of what Sasuke wears with the Uchiha fan. She was not as curvy as Hana but still looked good, a mini version of Mikoto with a C-cup. The two girl was currently shooting eye lighting at each other. He's mine hyuga bitch, you will never get him, thought Anika. Get your hands off him Uchiha whore, he's mine and I don't share, thought Hana as they made their way to train at training ground 12. Night. Kushina was still training when she heard the doorbell. She opened the door to see a girl Naruto's age with a normal katana with the exception of the guard, which is in the shape of a 4-pointed bronze-colored star. Its hilt is light blue and sheath dark blue on her back. Kushina-sama, would you train me to use this? The girl said as she pointed to her sword. Why? Kushina said, realizing it was one of the girls Naruto had saved. Because I want to save Naruto someday like he did for me, the girl replied. Then why don't you train with Naruto and his friends? Kushina asked. I want to surprise him, the girl replied. Alright, you torture, I mean training begins now, Kushina said as they dragged the girl into the house. The next day in class. So today is the day, said Naruto, glad to soon be out of the academy, and the girls nodded their heads in excitement knowing today will be the day of the graduation. Chapter 3, Fight for Your Life. Last time, Naruto was taking a walk through the streets glad he and the girls passed the exam, but he suddenly notices Mizuki and Iruka running to the forest and decided to follow them. Now, finally, we just need to get to the gates and we will be home free, Iruka, said Mizuki. You right, Mizuki, Iruka replied. Really, from the way things look right now, you're just going to die, said Naruto appears in front of Mizuki. He kicked Mizuki in his chest forcing him to let go of the scroll. Iruka run through a few hand signs, shouted, Die demon brat, this is for my parents, fire release great ball of fire, and shot out a giant fireball at Naruto. Naruto just stand with a bored look on his face, then he run through some hand seal and slam his hand into the ground and said earth release. Earth style wall, and a giant wall block the fireball. Suddenly Mizuki appear behind Naruto and shove a short blade into his skull as Naruto vanish in a puff of smoke. Shit, a shadow clone, where the hell is he? Yelled Mizuki. We don't have time, let's deliver the scroll to Lord Orochimaru, said Iruka. As they were about leave they heard voice shouted water release. Water whale bullet technique, and giant whale came crashing down at them, forces them to split up and run in different location. With Mizuki. You thought you could get away, a voice said. Come out, Kyuubi brat, so I can kill you, yelled Mizuki as he looked around for Naruto. Suddenly a shout of, Kaiman, the gate of opening, then Naruto appeared in front of him. Front lotus, and Mizuki receive a bone-crushing kick to the jaw. You could hear the cracking of bone as he sent flying into the trees. With Iruka. Iruka was jumping from tree to tree when Naruto appeared in front of him. Give me scroll or I will kill you, Naruto said. Like you could kill me, demon brat, yelled Iruka, charging at him as he run through a couple of ensigns fire release. Great fireball technique, shooting it at him. Naruto just stood there letting it hit him when the fire clear. Naruto was nowhere in sight. Is that all you have, Iruka? I'm very disappointed, replied Naruto on the opposite side of Iruka, yawning. Iruka started seeing red and charge at Naruto, not seeing the smile on Naruto's face, as they engage in a taijutsu spar with Iruka gaining the upper hand when Naruto charka spike and Naruto vanish. Suddenly Naruto appeared behind Iruka and stabbed him in his back when, poof, Iruka was replaced with a log substitution technique. At that moment Naruto felt two spike through his stomach. Earth release. Earth spike. Iruka came from behind a tree with a smile on his face seeing Naruto being impaled by the spikes. I'll be hero for killing the nine-tail, though, Iruka. Suddenly he heard several chirping bird Chidori, then Naruto was in front of him. He could see Naruto's red slit eyes as Naruto's hand went through his chest. How? He replied. Blood clone, Naruto whispered in his ears. Iruka slumped forward, his hand landing on Naruto's shoulder as he held the pose of stabbing Iruka. A grin spread on the older man's mouth as his life force drained out on the earth below, and he whispered a few choice words to Naruto as his last revenge. Remember this, boy. Remember me as your first kill. The first blood on your hands. Remember why you are a monster. Iruka said as he coughed up blood, then he fell back and hit the ground as the Naruto in front of him turned into blood. With Mizuki. Doden. Earth Fisher, Mizuki slammed his fist into the ground and Naruto felt the ground shake around him and realized where he was standing was not as safe. The ground collapsed in on itself and took several trees with it. Naruto leaped off the ground onto a tree limb. He didn't get much time to recover though as Mizuki came up and kicked him right in the gut, sending him back and forcing him into a tree. Let's see your girlfriends save you from this time, Nine Tails. Mizuki grabbed a kunai and ran forward, knowing that the boy got the wind knocked out of him and wouldn't be able to move. Naruto watched as Mizuki charged him. Should I use up too much charka on my first attacks? What the hell is taking Kurumu so long? He knew he only had enough charka for one attack alone, he just has to make it count. Yahoo Naruto-kun, I'm back, did you miss me? Kurumu shouted. Could you give me some charka? Naruto replied. Anything for you Naruto-kun, Kurumu said as Mizuki charged at Naruto as he reached closer to stab. Naruto dodges his attack, then Mizuki was sent flying into the trees. Shit, that kick broke 3 of my ribs. Mizuki, is that all you have? As he got up when Naruto appeared in front of him with his Mangekyo Sharingan activated. Tsukuyomi. In the world of Tsukuyomi, Mizuki was chained to a bed while he was being raped by Orochimaru for the 72 hours as he screams, "An. Too troublesome to write." Real world. Screaming was heard through the village. The memory of what Iruka had said to him came back and what he had just done. Mom was right, Naruto said. Flashback 2 years. Naruto had just killed a Chunin that had attacked him when he went to the bathroom, and now he was in the hospital treating his injuries. He looked up and saw his mother. She was not surprised to see some tears there. Rin-chan said that the path of the shinobi was the path of death and glory. She also said that we must always be ready to kill or die to protect our village. That is what it means to be shinobi. He sighed. It's the same thing that you, Hit-chan, Mik-chan, Yosh-chan and Su-chan have all told me. I understand it, it's just. The reality is never how you picture it to be. She said simply. She gently wiped his tears away and smiled at him proudly. Taking a life should never be done without reason. When we kill, we do so in self-defense or in the service of our village, which is what separates us from murderers or bandits. As long as you acting under any one of those 2 circumstances, do not doubt that your actions are just. Does it get easier? He asked. She nodded. It does. In time you will learn to simply kill and not feel. He shuddered a bit. That sounds awful. She slowly nodded. In a way it is, but Naruto-kun, do you want to feel this every time you are forced to kill? Could you bear it? The girls and I have both killed many in our times, and I think we are all good people with good hearts. But if we could not turn our heart off when we needed to, we would go mad. He looked at her unhappily. You turn your hearts off. Kushina nodded. We learn not to feel at those times. It is the only way to do it and stay sane. Mom, it sounds kind of cold-blooded. It is, son, but if you are a shinobi you cannot always afford to be human. She hugged him again and kissed him. Do not misunderstand me. I do not mean to deaden your heart all the time, for that is just as bad as feeling too much. Be human, love, laugh, and even cry when your heart tells you to. You learn to do it when the time calls for it, son. Naruto looked at her and slowly nodded. I think I understand. Flashback end. The Anbu arrived only to see the scroll unharmed and the dead bodies of Iruka and Mizuki. In the trees, Naruto was looking at the Anbu smirking. I think it's time for me to head home, whispered Naruto in a very low voice. The Anbu decided to take the dead traitors and the scroll and leave. Then a yellow eyes figure appear licking its lips. My you have grown strong, Naruto-kun, you soon be mine. Then it vanishes. A week later, Naruto was coming from training. They not had decided the team placement yet when he heard. Lee, my youthful student, you will be stronger than ever. Guy said, pumping his fist for emphasis. Guy-sensei, I will run 100 laps around the village. Lee yelled to his sensei. And if you do not run 100 laps around the village, I will do 500 push UPS. Guy boasted. And if you are not able to do 500 push UPS, then I will do 1000 jump ropes. Lee wailed, tears starting to form. Yosh Lee, your flames of youth burn brightly. Guy shouted as tears appears in his eyes. It is all because of your tutelage, Guy-sensei. Screamed Lee as tears appeared in his eyes as well. Lee, Guy-sensei. Lee, Guy-sensei. Lee. Suddenly the two were hugging, tears falling from them like waterfalls. As they did, a sunset background appeared behind them as well as a waterfall and a rainbow as they continued to call each other's names. Guess Guy decided to take my advice and a train academy student, Naruto said. Yeah, he was disappointed when you could only open the first gate, Kurumu replied. Oh, you are awaked, Naruto said. Yeah, that noise wakes me up, Kurumu replied. Few minutes later, Naruto was trekking back home. As he entered gates he was suddenly surrounded by 10 Anbu members with a root symbol on their forehead protector. Lord Danzo would like you to join us, Dog Mask said. What if I don't want to join to him, replied Naruto. You don't have choice, either you join us or die, shouted the Dog Mask Anbu. Naruto began to wait his option, then he walked forward and said, alright, I join you, but first where is my mother? She will be fine as long as you come with us. said the dog mask Anbu. Suddenly a man came flying out of the house and crashed right in front of him. When Naruto looked at him he had a broken, then another came flying out with the same problem. A furious but Kushina came flying out and punched the dog mask Anbu mask in his face, sending him flying into the trees. Naruto had to hold back a blush as looked at a half Kushina with only a towel on. "You were trying to rape my mother, I'm going to kill all of you," Naruto roared as the red charka begun to cover his body. Some of the Anbu begun to sweat because of the powerful ki that were directed at them. He appeared behind an Anbu and shoved his kunai through his chest. The others regained their senses and started attacking him at once. "Fire release fire dragon technique," they all shouted as a huge explosion that rocks the village. With Kushina, she was fighting off 5 Anbu, cut them down with her kanata one after another, Uzumaki style. Dance of the full moon, then disappear. All the Anbu suddenly fell to the ground dead. She heard the explosion. "Naruto," she screamed as she was about to run over to him. 5 more Anbu appear before her. With the Hokage. He was in his office when he heard the explosion. He saw that it was coming for the Uzumaki compound. He summoned his loyal Anbu cat. She long purple hair, you guessed you, she is snake. She had short purple, same with her, and tiger, and they all rushed to the compound. With Naruto. When the explosion clears, Naruto was not there anymore. "Looks as if we killed the demon brat," replied a nameless Anbu. Then he heard a voice, "Wind release. Flying swords of doom." 50 wind swords came flying a fast speed, killing all the Anbu. Naruto came out of his hiding place as he stopped kneeling down and started breathe hard as he had used too much charka in that technique, and suddenly he heard chirping birds behind him. He turns around to see the goat mask Anbu and froze it. Then his memory came back. It was same person that had attacked him years ago. As the attack was about to hit Naruto, a gentle hand pushed him away and took the attack for him. It was his mother. She had took the Chidori for him right through her shoulder. She then kicked away the Anbu. Then 10 more root Anbu came out of nowhere surrounding her. Kushina tried to fight off all of them until a sword pierced her chest. Then he saw them holding her down. "Mom!" Naruto shouted as he ran towards her with blind rage when something a kunai pierced his legs and shoulders. As he fell to the ground he heard. "Loin now," said the goat mask Anbu. "Mind destruction no jutsu," a loin mask Anbu with blonde hair shouted. A few seconds later they both started to scream as they both fell to the ground. Goat went over to check on them. "Shit, he is dead. The bitch mind is a lot stronger than we thought," he replied. "I'm not strong enough to save her, this where I die." Naruto as the Anbu came in for the kill when a yellow eye figure appeared between them. The last thing Naruto heard was, "Ku before darkness take over him." With the Hokage earlier. As they jumped from roof to roof, everybody was shocked to see a dome of about 50 wind blade on the far part of the village surrounding a portion of the Uzumaki compound. "Move faster," shouted the Hokage. The yellow eye figure. "Fools, I won't allow you to touch my prize," the figure said as it vanishes. The root Anbus fell to the ground. The only one to escape was the goat mask root. The figure walked up to Naruto to look to see if he was alright as it reached Naruto and kneeled down and exposes its fang to bite Naruto on his neck when it heard someone coming and vanishes. A moment the Hokage and his Anbu arrived to see the unconscious bloody bodies of Naruto and Kushina, and dead root Anbu were everywhere. "Call Sununade now," yelled the Hokage. At root hideout. "Lord Danzo, we have failed you," Goat said. "What happened?" replied Danzo. As he told the story, Danzo had a frown on his face. "Was it Orochimaru?" said Danzo. "Not sure, I didn't see it face," replied Goat. "At least we got that blasting woman out of the way, we'll get him next time." At the hospital, Naruto woke up to see Hana, Anika, and Mikoto crying at his bedside. "Stop crying, you know I can't bear to see beautiful ladies cry," said a weak Naruto. All 3 of them blush and hug him, drowning him in. Alright Naruto-kun," they all yelled. "I'm fine ladies, but where is my mom? Is she alright?" he asked. Nobody answered. "Where is my mother?" Naruto yelled. "Calm down, she's alright, but she is in a coma and we don't know if she will ever come out of it," replied Sununade as she entered the room. Naruto hold down his head, begun to cry. "It's my fault," he said. "No, it's not," all the girls yelled. "Yes it is, if I was strong enough I could have saved her." Naruto yelled. "Naruto-kun, stop saying that no one could defeat that many persons, you did your best," said Hana. "Hana is right Naruto," replied Mikoto. She lifted up his face and bring it closer to hers. She could see that they weren't reaching him. Naruto break away from Mikoto grasp and gave her a smile. Tsunade, take me to her, Naruto said. Tsunade motioned for him to follow him. As Naruto got out of the bed, the hospital goon fell of him, revealing Naruto and his big member showing, but Naruto didn't even realize as he continued to walk, but the girls Mikoto and Tsunade did. Makoto, Hana and Anika blushed, then was blow back with massive nosebleed. Tsunade had to use her training as a med to prevent from passing out from a massive nosebleed. As they walked through the hall where all the nurses were, when they saw Naruto they all pass out from nosebleed. This continued until they reached Kushina's room. Patients and visitor, female only, alike pass out with nosebleed while the men cursed Naruto. That day was known as the bloodiest day in the village history. In Kushina room, Kushina was there laying on the bed with tube coming out of her throat and hook up to a life monitor. When Naruto saw his beautiful mother laying there, tears begun to fall from his eyes as he remembered what had happened to them and how powerless he was. That made him cry even harder. Danzo is going to pay for this. I will get my revenge if it is the last thing I do, but how? Naruto though as he fell asleep. Mindscape. Yahoo! Kurumu shouted as she tackles Naruto to the ground as she covers high face. Get off me Kurumu, I'm not in the mood, Naruto replied. Sorry Naruto-kun, I was just trying to cheer up my destiny one, Kurumu said. You're what? Naruto asked. Oh nothing, Kurumu replied a little too quickly. Right, the only way to cheer me up is to make me stronger. Naruto said. Fine, but we will have to leave the village first, Kurumu replied. Are you crazy? I can't leave my mom alone. Naruto shouted. I have that taken care of, just trust me, Kurumu replied. Fine, what do I have to do? Naruto asked. A few minutes Naruto left Kushina's room, not seeing the red charca surrounding her. Next day in the Hokage office. No Naruto, for the last I can't allow you to train outside the village, you have to do it with your team, yelled the Hokage. I need to get stronger and get my revenge on Danzo, my teammates will only hold me back. Naruto yelled back. Revenge is never the answer, yelled Hokage. Whatever old man, I'll go whether you approve or not, as he walk out. Naruto, take one more step and I will have to stop you by force if necessary, yelled the Hokage. Naruto stopped in place and turned round with his Mangekyo Sharingan. You can try, Naruto replied. Sudden the Hokage was sent flying from his office window into a house. He saw Naruto running to the gate. The Hokage uses a technique to cut Naruto off. Earth release. Earth box. 4 huge walls surround Naruto, trapping him. As the Hokage walked to detain Naruto, the box explode as the heard a voice. Lighting release. Lighting lion bullet. The lion charge at the Hokage, but he easily dodges it and the lion hit into a building, killing the people in it. Naruto ran towards the gate again when he was hit by a very powerful wind. Wind release. Great barrier wind. The attack sends him crashing into the wall. Give up Naruto, you can't escape me. If you give up now I'll forgive you for attack me, the Hokage said. No, I can't do that. I need power to kill Danzo and get my revenge. I will come back into just 2 years, I'm begging you. You can even send someone to train me please, Hokage-sama, Naruto said as he got on his knees with tears coming out of his eyes. I sorry Naruto, but I can't, replied the Hokage. Then you leave me with no choice. I will have to use my most powerful attack to kill you and leave, said Naruto as he called forth all the 9-tailed charca. Then he run through some sign that the Hokage had never seen before, and the Hokage run through some himself. Wind, fire style. Wind, fire dragon bullet, shouted the Hokage. Nova release. Big bang, roared Naruto. Think Vegeta from DBZ attack. The two attack collided, causing a great explosion. Is it clear? You could see blonde hair running through the gate, but the Hokage was nowhere to be found. Kai release. Nice try Naruto, you almost got me, but Genjutsu won't work on me. And where did you get a Sharingan from? Said the Hokage. Naruto started to sweat as he used up a lot charca to cast the demonic illusion, false death, as he fell to the ground. Mindscape. I told you it wouldn't work, Naruto shouted. Calm down Naruto-kun, there is still Genjutsu that will work on the old fool, Kurumu replied. And what is that? Naruto asked. It is a surprise, you will just have to trust me, Kurumu replied. Fine, what should I do? Naruto asked. Just this, Kurumu replied as she leaned forward and capture his lips with her and insert her tongue into his mouth. Naruto froze for a second, then wrap his hand around her waist and deepen the kiss for a minute, then they separate. Naruto could feel the power going through him. What was that for? Naruto asked. In case, Kurumu replied. In case what? Naruto asked. You die, Kurumu replied, and before Naruto could reply, he vanishes from his mindscape. Good luck Naruto-kun, yelled Kurumu. Real world. As the Hokage came closer to retrieve him, he felt a surge of chakra force him back. Then Naruto stood up with his Mangekyo Sharingan blazing Koto Amatsukami mind-controlling dojutsu. Hokage, you will let me leave the village for 2 years to train. You will tell the council that you are the one that sent me to train and that you will send someone to watch me too, and you also send Yoshino, Mikoto and Hitomi to protect my mother. You will give me a copy of the scroll about sealing arts you have. Naruto Sahida's blood came out of his eyes and ears. Hurry up Naruto-kun, you won't last any longer, Kurumu said. I know Kurumu-chan, Naruto replied. And finally you will never remember this fight, Naruto said. Yes master, the Hokage said as he retrieves the scroll and gave it to Naruto. Then Naruto took it and left. Outside the village, Naruto had just left the Leaf Village to go on his 2-year training. He had took some scrolls from the Uzumaki compound that he will learn. Naruto traveled for 2 days until he was out of the Land of Fire, where he found a place to rest and train. Hey Kurumu, what are you going to train me, Naruto? First I'll teach you a technique, set me free for a while, then we are going to get you in shape before any serious training. For next 3 weeks we will be doing physical training, Kurumu said as Naruto set her free. The first she was to tackle him to the ground and covered his face with her wonderful. After that training started for the next 3 weeks, Naruto did 1000 push-up, 1000 sit-up, 2000 laps, 1000 handstand push, all with 100-pound weights on every hour for the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks later. Okay Naruto, now that finish I can only teach you ninjutsu, so for any other training you have to find a master, Kurumu said. That's fine, I always like ninjutsu anyway, so what am I going to learn first, Naruto said. First we going to learn water, then wind, then fire, then lighting, and finally earth, she said. Then she handed him a scroll for him to started with. Then Naruto created some clones to start on the scroll. Water release, water dragon bullet. Water release, great waterfall jutsu. Water release, raging wave. And etc. 5 more left. 1 month later. Now that you have mastered all of the water jutsu, I know next we have wind. Wind release, wind dragon bullet. Wind release, 1000 blades. Wind release, wind dome. And etc. 5 more left. 2 months later. Naruto's mindscape. Kur-chan, I want you to change my DNA from that man, Naruto said. But why, you may lose any bloodline from his side of the family, Kurumu replied. I don't care, after what he did to my mom and me, Naruto replied. Fine, but this going to hurt, Kurumu replied. Just do it, Naruto said. A second later Naruto started to scream out in pain as Kurumu changed his DNA. So his father bloodline allows him to absorb other bloodline. I can't get rid of that, it one of the most powerful bloodline, but Naruto-kun don't want it, Kurumu sighed. First thing separate all his DNA, then destroy his father's alone, Kurumu said. 2 hours later. Oops, Naruto is going to kill me, Kurumu said. The next day. Naruto, wake up, Kurumu said. Is it done? Naruto asked. Yes, but there is a problem, Kurumu replied. What is it? Naruto asked. I sort of accidentally delete almost all your mother's DNA, Kurumu. You did what? Naruto said. What if Sharingan? Naruto has harem with Mikoto and Chapter 1. Great Scott. Uzumaki Naruto. Herald. Greetings, mortal. Uzumaki Namikaze. Naruto opened sleep-gummed eyes and promptly snapped them back shut. Hanging before him against the endless white was a creature straight out of nightmare. Its golden black eyes framed by a wave of white tresses, bleached of all color, deathly white, from which 2 horns of crimson peaked. Pallid, purplish emaciated skin, ribs exposed beneath the robe. A dagger clenched firmly between its jagged teeth, its lips pulled back in a ghastly grin. He wanted to deny it, to refute its existence, but there could be no mistaking it. Shinagami. Do not close your eyes. Unbidden, the last Uzumaki watched his lids snap open, forcing him to regard the imposing apparition once more. A cold chill shot down his spine at the sight of the specter looming before him, one he quickly quelled. If he was going to hell, then he'd at least face his afterlife with dignity. Oh, it's you. Rise. The Reaper intoned. Naruto grunted, propping himself up on his elbows. So he really was dead, then. Funny. He'd always thought death would have hurt more. Not that his death had been painless, mind you, using the Shikifujin to seal away Madara's soul had been anything but painless. He'd known there would be pain, that even should he succeed nothing but hell awaited him in the afterlife. He'd known this from the beginning. It was a tenuous, desperate last reso, and although he'd failed to seal Obito in the bargain, he still considered it a victory. Honestly, it was still something of a miracle he'd even managed to get his hands on one of them at all. With the Jaibi flinging menacing balls in nearly every direction, he considered himself lucky to have accomplished half of his mission at all. Even with an undead, immortal body, nothing could have protected his immortal soul from being plucked from said body and sealed away. Granted, he'd lost an arm and a leg in the process, but a win was a win in his book. Uzumaki Naruto had left the world of the living knowing that, while he may have failed to preserve the lives of his friends and family, he'd managed to take the man responsible for their deaths with him in the end. He could take some small solace in that fact, at the very least. He was sorrowed to have lost so many, with nothing to bring them back. If I could do it over again. The world as you know it is coming to an end, mortal. The Reaper droned on, dragging out each syllable with the deep double timbre befitting of an entity of its stature. You may have sealed the one known as Uchiha Madara, but his legacy lives on. Already there is an imbalance in the souls I have come to collect. Yours is among them. You think I don't know that? Naruto allowed a single tear to slip from his eye, to plink back into the white, into oblivion. We failed. I failed. The war is over. We lost. Because they had failed. The Shinobi Alliance had been all but decimated. All but the Raikage were dead. Madara might be gone, but Obito had likely gained possession of the remaining Biju by now, his own included. His only regret was that he hadn't been able to try and drag Obito with him to hell. That man deserved to burn in the ninth circle for the crimes he'd committed in the name of his so-called peace. Not that there was anything more to be done about it. If I had another chance. Even with Kurama's power, he wouldn't have been able to stand up to 3 Uchiha at once by himself. His one regret was that despite his best efforts to make it otherwise, his final sight before death had been that of Uchiha Obito, the last sound that of his determined growl that the Moon's Eye plan would come to fruition no matter what he Naruto did, that he'd at most delayed peace by preventing the world from being cast under an infinite, endless genjutsu. And Konoha. Konoha was gone. What more did the Reaper want from him? Unacceptable. Oh. Naruto creaked open a broken iris, regarding the specter of death with blank indifference. What does it matter if it's acceptable or not? They won. We lost. There's nothing I can do to change it now, so just let me croak already. Besides, it's not like I've got anything left to live for. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan, Ba-chan, Neji, Hinata, Shikamaru, they're all dead. I already know I won't be joining them. You might as well devour it now. My soul, that is. The Shinagami stared at him for a long moment, as though weighing its decision. If it was going to eat him, he just wanted it to be over with already. But the Shinagami did not devour him. Instead its gaze became aloof and distant, as though it were peering at something many leagues in the distance. There is an imbalance. The Reaper repeated. I cannot allow this to stand. Inwardly, Naruto bit back a groan. He had a bad feeling about this. Can't allow what to stand. The Shinigami rounded on him with a hiss of breath. The Uchiha's genjutsu, was its growling reply as it spun away from him. With so many under its spell, humanity no longer fears death, nor are there any souls left for me to reap. Unacceptable. This transgression shall not go unpunished. White robes whistled soundlessly as it wheeled around to face him again, golden eyes ablaze. Mortal, what are you thinking in this instant? Hey, your thoughts? The Reaper repeated. I was thinking of, Naruto bristled, the rest of his sentence left unspoken. He'd been contemplating what he'd done wrong, what he could have corrected if he had a second chance. A fresh start, a second chance. At first the Reaper didn't seem to register its words, its unholy eyes shrinking to mere pinpricks of brilliance. Suddenly and without warning, it reached a clawed hand up to its hair and yanked down. Hard. Naruto didn't have a chance to protest. He could only gag as his soul flowed from Reaper's mouth, and into his own, pouring life back into his body. Sensation flooded his limbs as life returned to them, enabling his body to move properly as he wished. This one would ask a boon of you mortal, undo what has been done. Hey, I shall return to you the yin chakra of your tenant, bequeathed to me by your father. It decided after a moment's consideration. Be thankful. Before Naruto could protest, the Shinigami removed the knife from its mouth and, without warning, plunged it to the hilt in its stomach. Gore squirted out of the wound, wrenching Naruto's stomach from within, though the wound was not his own. What the hell are you doing? He gawped as the Shinigami dragged out a milky white substance from its stomach that looked succinctly like, was that a soul? Without a word, the Reaper dropped its essence across his prone form, suffusing his body in a warm glow from his head to his toes. He struggled to his feet, gawping as the Nine Tails chakra flared about his body, only to vanish an instant later. He could feel the power of his tenant rushing through his veins, the only absence was its consciousness. There. The Shinigami took the knife between its teeth once more. Your chakra is restored to you. Use it well and wisely. I don't want it. Oh. Like an iron trap, the Shinigami's gaze locked onto the shinobi's own. The sheer intensity of its stare, the sudden ice in its expression, was enough to silence the blonde. Nothing moved. Nothing at all. And then it spoke, voice black as pitch, eyes cold as the coldest winter. Your soul is already in my domain, mortal. The Shinigami rumbled. It is now mine to do with as I please. You have no say in the matter. Regarding that, you will require more than just the chakra of your tenant to succeed in your mission. Much more. Naruto felt his stomach twist in disgust and revulsion as the Reaper plunged a long-fingered hand deep into the gaping wound in its stomach, driving its arm to the elbow as it sought something within its innards. Naruto looked away, unable to bear such a sight. Rather, he tried. Something in those golden black orbs riveted him, forcing him to look on as the Shinigami finally found what it sought. Abruptly it stilled, its cold eyes locking upon Naruto. Prepare yourself. Prepare myself for WHAAAAAAAAAAAARGH. Naruto cried out in pain and surprise as the scalding liquid struck his eyes, searing itself into his retina. He doubled over in utter agony. It felt like someone had plunged burning brand into both his eyes. They burned. Oh dear Kami, did they burn? You, what the hell did you just do? He glowered at the Shinigami, or at least, what he thought was the Shinigami. Everything was so blurry he could barely make out coherent shapes. The Reaper laughed. It was a deep, throaty sound. Behold yourself and the blessing I have given you, Uzumaki Naruto. It paused, contemplating. Or perhaps I should call you Uchiha Naruto. The Reaper beckoned, indicating the reflective surface that served as the ground at their feet. Naruto followed its direction and balked, alarmed to find a stranger staring back at him. His blue eyes were gone, darkened to almost charcoal, his hair having faded to black as well. His skin was a tad paler than he remembered it being, having lost most of the luster it had gained over the years. It was still his face, whiskers and all, but even as he looked on, those faded, diminished in the wake of this strange transformation. He scarcely recognized himself. His visage was still his own somehow, only not. Thankfully, the voice that emerged was still his own. If that had changed, he would have lost his mind. What have you done? The Shinigami offered a rictus of a grin. Consider it proof of my trust in you. I look like Aang Uchiha. That was my intent. The godlike entity replied. Your existence as Uzumaki Naruto will pose a hindrance to the task I have aimed you, thus, you are Uchiha. Oi! Naruto hissed out in a fierce whisper. Cut the crap. I don't give two shiits if you're the Reaper or not. Don't go changing people's faces without asking, ya know. I don't want this. And I sure acing hell don't want these damned eyes. Madara's eyes. Now change me back right now or. The Reaper met his ire with a flat stare and licked its lips. If you'd rather I consume your soul here and now, then by all means, I shall do so. Naruto blanched, his resolve wilting in the face of this threat. While it was true he'd accepted his demise, he wasn't all that eager to enter into the belly of the beast. If there was anything he could do to right the wrongs made by Madara and his twisted ideals, he should jump at the chance, right? But he was tired. Oh, so very tired. Tired of fighting. And if the Shinigami really was about to return him to the land of the living, it would be his one chance, his only chance, a chance to make things right. A chant from the land of the dead. You will act in my stead. The apparition continued on unheeded, but on one condition: you must undo the damage that has been done. Right the wrongs of the past, correct the mistakes of the old generation for the sake of the young. I will give you as much time as needed. But know this, if you fail your task you will suffer the consequences of your actions. Should you falter, your deeds will be known to me. Should you hesitate, I will come for you. Should you perish, before completing your task, I will devour you, trapping your soul in my stomach until the end of time. This is our pact. This is our contract. But we have tarried in limbo too long. There is work to be done, and you are the one who must do it. Don't I get any say in this? Naruto groaned. None. The Reaper growled. Now be off with you. Now wait just a damned min. Ute. Naruto blinked and the white was gone. In its place hung a full moon, peeking out beyond the rim of the clouds, gazing upon a sea of trees below. Falling. He snarled in surprise, flinging a hand out to snare the nearest branch in his grasp, his fingers wrapping around the damp pines like an iron vice. Grunting as he struggled to arrest his momentum, the former Jinchuriki tethered himself to the tree with chakra, sticking to its surface as one would the ground. He hung there for a moment, his senses still reeling from the sudden drop in pressure. Oi, he grumbled to himself, at least drop me on solid ground, ya know. He frowned up at the moon, evidently Obito had yet to enact the moon's eye plan. Inwardly, he heaved a sweet sigh of relief. Thanked Kami in heaven. There was still time, then. Time enough to find that prick of an Uchiha and drag him down to hell. Then he would find Sasuke, beat the ever-loving crap out of him and… What have we here? Taking a moment to orient himself, he caught sight of a telltale flicker of movement only a few feet below his perch. Stilling his breath he waited until they were passed before taking stock of them. 3 grown men, and 1 girl with strikingly scarlet hair. She couldn't have been more than 4 years younger than him, placing her near 14 or 15 years of age. He couldn't see their faces as their backs were to him, even so he doubted he would have been able to make them out in the gloom. Still, something struck him as odd. Though the group of shinobi encircled her, suggesting they weren't, in fact, an escort after all, her hands were held behind her back. Why would anyone walk like that? A knot of rope around her wrists merely confirmed his suspicion, as did the hands of the man who held it. Kidnappers. Naruto's mind raged, torn between reluctance and resistance. Did he really have the time to play hero right now? For all he knew, Obito was preparing the Moon's Eye plan even as he dithered here. Eventually anger won out. He felt his eyes begin to burn as he watched them creep further and further away, blissfully unaware of his presence. That didn't last long. He descended feet first from the trees, dropping like a wraith toward the head and shoulders of the straggler, the one holding the rope. There was a brief moment of tense silence, the man's knees buckling beneath his sudden and unexpected weight, his fingers falling slack around as he reached up to remove the obstruction. By the time he'd realized his own peril, Naruto's hands had already closed around his mouth and face, muffling his cry of pain, as his knees struck the damp earth. The Jinchuriki felt no pity for his victim, a vicious twist of the wrist and he was gone, the life leeching from his eyes before his body could touch the ground. Naruto bolted upwards from the corpse and lunged forward, hoping to take the remaining shinobi by surprise. And for a moment, it seemed that he would. Both men still had their backs to him. They were yet unaware of the sudden demise of their compatriot, ignorant that their captive had slowed her pace to a near crawl behind them. Naruto dared to hope he might yet escape from this scuffle unscathed and continue on his way. His hope shattered as a small squeak pierced the air. Both men rounded as one, a brace of shuriken flying from their fingertips in the time it took a lesser man to blink. Thankfully, Naruto was not a lesser man. In the time it took the girl to squeak in surprise, he'd already dropped flat to the road. The deadly throwing stars now whistled harmlessly over his head. As the last of the lethal projectiles whisked themselves by, he was already in motion, lunging into the moonlight, throwing himself between the men and their captive before they could even comprehend his presence. Beneath the light of the moon, he was finally afforded a clear picture of her captors, and they, him. Their faces weren't even remotely worth mentioning, although they did stiffen as he stood to his full height. Oi, the hell do you guys think you're doing? Naruto growled, recognizing their Hishiates belonged to Kumogakure. Doesn't your Raikage have better things to do than kidnap little girls? We're in the middle of a war for Crisix. He balked as the 2 remaining Cloud Shinobi exchanged a glance, took one look at him, then at his Hishiate, and drew their kunai. Shit, an Uchiha. One of them exclaimed. Hey, I'm not an. Kill him, cried the other. A muscle jumped in the blonde's jaw. Try me. Gua. The last of her abductors toppled backwards, gurgling as he clutched at his now broken windpipe with both hands. Naruto contemplated him a moment longer, savoring his stricken expression, before a roundhouse kick smashed into his now unprotected stomach. A third and final blow put him out of commission altogether, sending his body careening through the undergrowth. Naruto watched him fall and had to visibly bite back a laugh at the ease with which he dispatched his opponents. And to think they called themselves shinobi. Their movements were slow and predictable. It was almost laughable. No, it was laughable. He needn't have killed those two, but with those injuries, they wouldn't be waking up for a good long while. A soft whimper abruptly reminded him of his place. "You Uchiha." Naruto rounded on the voice with an exasperated hiss, his eyes wild, and stopped. The red-headed girl was looking up at him with something akin to shock, or perhaps it was awe. He couldn't be certain of it in the dim light. He was, however, certain that she was looking at him. "Oi, I'm not." He frowned down at her, the words dying on his lips as he caught a glimpse of himself in a nearby puddle. Sinister scarlet orbs stared back at him, ringed by a single tomo in each iris. Sharingan. Naruto bristled at the sight of the cruel crimson eyes, unable to accept that they belonged to him, to the sinister visage staring back at him. So it wasn't a dream after all. The Shinagami really hated with his DNA. Apparently that angry outburst earlier had been enough to unlock the vaulted eyes of the clan. Not his clan. Not. Naruto refused to think of himself as one of those stick-up-their-ass Avengers, even with his newfound powers and appearance going hand in hand. Damn you to hell, Shinagami. He contemplated the quivering kunoichi. She had to be at least a genin for what felt like an eternity. Clearly, judging by her hishiate, she was from Konoha. But why would Kumo try to kidnap someone so suddenly? There was a war on, for the love of Kami. What possible purpose could the kidnapping of a single soul serve? Ah, hell. He had to at least try and get her back to Konoha. She didn't look to be in any real shape to make it back on her own anyway. "Hey, you alright?" he asked. She continued to stare at him, her mouth agape. Naruto took a deep breath and closed his eyes. When next they opened, he saw no hint of the accursed copy wheel in them. "Hello? Anyone home?" Scowling, he waved a hand before her face, eliciting a slow series of blinks. Doubtless she was still in shock over her recent release. How did you find me?" she asked softly. "She speaks." Naruto couldn't help but chuckle to himself. "As to how I found you, well, I guess you could thank your hair." He didn't feel like explaining to her how he had literally fallen out of the sky. Still, there was something oddly familiar about this girl. But what was it? The eyes. Her hair. He couldn't quite place his finger on it. Inexplicably, the girl flushed. You followed me because of my hair. Not just because of your hair." Naruto tried and failed to keep the grin from his face as he poked at her hishiate. "Because you're a comrade. You know what they say, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are even worse than scum." As he looked on, her cheeks continued to darken, as though heated by a furnace from within. Why was she blushing? Shrugging, Naruto stooped to untie her, slicing through the knot binding her wrists with a simple slice of a kunai. The girl mumbled her thanks and rubbed at her wrists, still refusing to look him in the eye. Strange. She refused to look at him even after he'd saved her. It hardly looked as though she'd be walking back to the village, either. Seeing no other way, he reached down and smoothly swept the genin off her feet as easily as a groom would his blushing bride. That got a reaction out of her. The kunoichi sputtered in surprise, her face flaring a shade brighter than even her silky scarlet hair. "Hey, wait a minute," she cried. What are you doing? Isn't it obvious?" Naruto couldn't believe her gall. Here he was trying to help her, and still she was being indignant. "You can't walk, so I'm carrying you." The girl grew still at this, her large eyes growing larger still. It was as if she were truly looking at him for the first time. "What's your name?" Uchiha Naruto. He instinctively amended, cursing himself for using that cursed clan name. "And just who the might you be, chibi?" The girl puffed out her cheeks in defiance. "I'm not a chibi. My name is Uzumaki Kushina, Databane." Databane. Naruto dropped her like a hot potato. He felt color drain from his face, felt a cold sweat break out across his broken and battered body. Before his mind shut down, he understood two things. First, and foremost, this little girl was beyond any shadow of a doubt, his mother. Second, apparently when the Shinagami had tasked him to right the wrongs of the past, he'd been speaking literally, as well as figuratively. Because this little girl was his mother and she was wearing a Konoha Hishiate and he had the succinct feeling he wasn't in his own time anymore. Oh dear Kami. Hey, are you alright? The girl who would one day become his mother asked, you're looking kinda pale. And what did Naruto do upon realizing this, you ask? Great Scott. Why, he fainted of course. Chapter 2, Home is where the heart is. Hey, are you awake? Obito. Naruto bolted upright with a startled snarl, eyes blazing, fingers wrapping around the first thing within reach and dragging it forward. A tiny feminine, eep, sounded somewhere off to his right, plucking him from the last vestiges of his nightmares at last second, 1 second too late. He found himself face to face with a young Uzumaki Kushina, her visage hanging perilously close to his own. Her cheeks were an incredibly bright shade of sweet scarlet, probably because she was sitting in his lap. Her nose was brushing against his, lips dangling mere centimeters away. Oh, shit. Memories came flooding back, reminding him just why he'd been out cold in the first place. He had fainted. Fainted, because he'd realized the awful truth of the Reaper's words. Righting the wrongs of the old generation for the sake of the new, hadn't been a mere metaphor. They'd been literal. At first he failed to understand what he had to gain by going this far back in time, then reality hit. He could fix everything. He wouldn't lose his friends, or his family, nor his parents to Obito. That's right, he would find Obito and, wait, had Obito even been born yet? Naruto-san. Naruto bristled at his mother's words. He'd learnt enough about his youth to expect a painful blow in recompense for his temerity. But none came. To his infinite disbelief she turned her head aside, her eyelids drooping slightly shut in what might have been embarrassment or, wait. Wait just a damned minute. She wasn't expecting him to. Why you're hurting me, she whispered. Ooh. Naruto forced himself to relax his grip, his teeth sinking into his lower lip until he tasted blood. That was close. Too close. Way too close. He'd nearly kissed his own mother. Although, looking at her now, it was hard to think of her as such, difficult to reconcile this blushing vixen only just entering into adolescence with the woman he'd met inside his seal. Did she already have Kurama sealed inside her, he wondered. If so, did the old fox retain any memory of him? Or had his mind been wiped clean, so much like everyone else? He ruthlessly resisted the urge to inquire about his former tenant. He knew from experience just how bitter the life of a Jinchuriki could be. Hey, Naruto glanced down at his mother, mildly alarmed to find her still chewing on her lower lip, squirming restlessly in his lap. Just how long do you intend to hold onto me like this? Once more, he silently suppressed the urge to panic. Although he had loosened his grip on Kushina's hand, he still hadn't let go of her waist just yet. Well, damn. Naruto forced himself to retract his arm, allowing the kunoichi to skitter backwards and out of arm's reach. Sorry, he muttered. Determined to distract himself, the Uzumaki turned Uchiha hazarded a glance at their surroundings. Taking in the small clearing they had apparently made camp in, the warmth afforded by the small fire burning behind served as their sole source of their illumination, thrusting their shadows against one another at odd angles. As he looked on, the flames flickered and grew dim. They couldn't have that now, could they? Drawing a deep breath in his lungs, he molded some chakra in his stomach, forming a single seal with his left hand. Kushina's gaze flicked toward him as he did so. Kaden. Without another word, he exhaled, expelling a thin stream of flames into the flickering blaze. Burgeoned by the fire, it leapt to life, brightening their surroundings considerable, a marked improvement on the dim lights offered earlier. When he returned his attention to the clearing, he found the kunoichi staring at him. Arigato. Kushina whispered, wringing her hands together. Naruto titled his head to the side, the universal way to go, huh? But the kunoichi only flushed ever darker. Huh? Mo, she exclaimed, her face flush with anger. I'm trying to thank you for saving me back there, Databane. Well excuse me, Datbeo. Naruto couldn't help himself, the words alongside his verbal tick, fled from his lips before he could stop them. Kinda hard to tell when you're shouting at me, ya know. At these words Kushina stiffened, her eyes bulging so large, her son was certain they'd fall right out of her pretty little head. Crap. Naruto's mind scrambled for an explanation, desperate to explain his verbal tic before his mother had a chance to put two and two together. Oi! It was so ridiculous that Kushina could not hold back her laugh. When was the last time she had laughed? Certainly not since she'd come to Konoha, not since she'd become a genin. For a moment, Naruto looked at her like she was nuts, but when he realized she was laughing at his comment and not at him, he grinned. Inwardly, he was taken aback. He'd been expecting confusion, not laughter. Ha! Kushina covered her mouth as she snickered, fighting back another fit of giggles. I thought I was the only who did that. Never thought I'd hear it from an Uchiha. Despite himself, the former blonde sweat dropped at the girl Fro would one day become his moth. Was she really going to accept such an implausible answer based solely on her own observations? Ah, well, he shrugged to himself, might as well play along. Well, I'm not like most Uchiha. Yeah, I noticed. Kushina beamed, a bright smile lighting up the features of her face. For starters, you don't have a gigantic stick up your. Naruto tried his best not to laugh. He really, truly did. But the moment his mother mentioned the words, stick, and ass, it was all he could do to contain himself. He'd chosen those very same words years before in his youth to describe the antisocial tendencies of a certain Avenger. For his own mother to throw them back in his face was simply too much for him to bear. He snickered, Sharingan flaring anew, in response to the sudden emotional outburst. He half expected Kushina to flinch at the sight of them. The redhead didn't so much as bat an eyelash. Why are you laughing? She asked. Because it's true. Naruto guffawed, momentarily forgetting himself in his good humor. The Uchiha do have a stick up there. His mother looked at him like he was crazy. Hell, she probably thought he was. Hey, that's your own clan you're talking about there, Tte. Yeah. Naruto's laughter stilled in his throat as he caught sight of himself in a nearby puddle, gazing upon his reflection with intent. He cut an imposing figure in his Junin uniform. Although he still loved the color orange, the war had been particularly unkind to his old jumpsuit, forcing him to give it up long ago. Before he'd lost everything, he pushed a hand through the shaggy raven mess that was once his blonde hair, idly marveling at the man who stared back at him. Having been promoted to Jonin shortly before the Jyabi laid waste to what remained of Konoha, he'd garnered a considerable repertoire of ninjutsu, in addition to his already countless odd variations of the Rasengan and Rasenshuriken. Looking at himself now, he couldn't help but wonder, would he still be able to use them? Would his contract with the Toads exist in this time? Would he be able to use Senjutsu? Hiraishin. His reflection offered a nervous smile in recompense for his temerity. But it was his pair of blazing bloodline orbs that riveted him. Instead of a single mark in the Sharingan, as he'd seen before, a pair of twin tomo circled angrily in each of his eyes, spinning with such speed they seemed little more than a black blur. He quelled them with an effort, but calming his troubled mind, did not prove nearly so simple. What the hell was going on here? He was certain there'd been only one tomo the last time he had looked, now there were two. Granted, he knew precious little when it came to the vaulted eyes of the Uchiha clan. What he did know came from mostly second-hand knowledge, and Kakashi-sensei. For a Sharingan to simply gain another tomo without cause was unheard of. Then Naruto remembered to whom these eyes belonged, and suddenly, everything made sense. Madara's eyes were evolving on their own. They had to be. There could be no other explanation. A sudden thought chilled him to the bone. If they were indeed evolving of their own accord, would they become the dread Mangekyo Sharingan on their own? Once if he gained that, it was only a matter of time until he became blind. And, thanks to his situation, he lacked a sibling or parent to swap eyes with. Naruto-san. The former blonde blinked, jostled from his reverie by Kushina's concerned expression. Naruto, he replied. Just Naruto will do. His mother flushed. Then Naruto, may I ask you a question? Shoot. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? Naruto nearly fell over. 17. He answered, yielding his true age without thinking. I'll be 18 in a couple of months. Assuming I don't get myself killed before then, he added to himself. My turn. He peered at her a moment, his eyes intent. You're, let me guess, 13. 15. Kushina shot back. My birthday was last week. Naruto managed a weak laugh. Happy belated birthday. Her anger seemed to abate a bit at that, her gaze softening as she looked upon him. What? It's just, Kushina fidgeted, you're one of the first to wish me a happy birthday since I came to Konoha. Huh? Naruto tilted his head aside, struggling to remember what little he did know about his mother. You've gotta be kidding me. No one's wished you a happy birthday. Kushina bobbed her head in acknowledgement to his words. It was all Naruto could do not to shout. From what she'd told him of it, her life in Konoha hadn't been particularly pleasant in the beginning. But to think she'd not have her own birthday celebrated, just like him, was this too, because of the Kyuubi? Not since I left Uzugakure, no. Well, I'll get you a present when we get back, or something. Naruto viciously bit back the urge to clamp a hand over his mouth as soon as he spoke. He'd just overplayed his hand. In his desire to cheer his mother up, to banish her melancholy mood, he'd gone and risked making a fool of himself. Probably already had. Kushina stared at him with wide eyes, her expression torn somewhere between delight and disbelief. Eventually she seemed to settle upon the former, much to Naruto's eternal chagrin. You know what? She decided suddenly, I'm going to hold you to that. Especially since you're only the second Uchiha to be this nice to me. Who was the first? He wondered aloud. Makoto-chan. Kushina brightened as soon as she uttered the name. She's my best friend. You'd probably like her. Mikoto. Something stirred in Naruto's memory at the mention of that name. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. Hadn't he heard that one somewhere before? Surely he had. Ah, well, if the name was that important then he'd remember it sooner or later. Say, Naruto-san. Yeah, can I ask you something else? What is this, 20 questions? Naruto laughed lightly, it was so damnably strange talking to a younger version of his mother. That didn't mean he wasn't enjoying himself, though. After the horrors he'd endured with the Fourth Shinobi War, it was a welcome relief just kick back and relax, even if only for a little while. At her crestfallen expression, however, he waved her on. Promise you won't laugh. I just single-handedly saved you from 3 enemy shinobi. The deadpan was barely concealed. I don't think I'm going to be laughing at you anytime soon. As I recall, you also dropped me. Kushina pointed out scathingly. You also fainted the minute I told you my name. Sorry for that. Naruto flushed in embarrassment. He silently swore he would never, ever faint again, no matter how embarrassed or surprised he might be. Anyway, you wanted to ask me something. Well yeah, Bane. Kushina leaned backward on her haunches, looking anywhere but at him. But this is just out of curiosity. Naruto's sweat dropped. He didn't recall his mother ever being this evasive. Is there supposed to be a question in there? Alright. The genin shook her head, her cheek burnished a sweet shade of scarlet. I'm just going to come out and ask. Naruto steepled his fingers and laid his chin upon them, doing his best to keep the smile from his face as she struggled to formulate her inquiry, his own embarrassment forgotten. Do you have a girlfriend? On there it was again. This time, Naruto really did fall over. Of all the things to ask him, she asked that. Groaning, he dragged himself back onto the log, only to find Kushina eyeing him intently, her violet orbs piercing him where he stood. Damn it. Though she was easily 2 years his junior, he found he just couldn't bring himself to deny her when it came to questions such as these. He could have lied to her, vehemently denied it, but in the end, he chose the truth of a different sort. And no, he admitted, the words burring in his throat. I don't. Not anymore. Another half-truth. He'd led a brief and tenuous relationship with Sakura sometime after the war broke out, one that had begun shortly after Sasuke's death and ended far too quickly. Cut brutally short by her death at the hands of Uchiha Obito only a month later. Yet another reason Naruto was looking forward to tracking down that Sonova bitch in this time and wringing the life out of his lungs. If that made him a murderer, then so be it. He just couldn't bring himself to forgive Thathole for killing the only girl he'd ever loved. Oh, she must have seen his murderous expression, because the inquisitive lilt faded from her eyes. I'm sorry. She sputtered. I didn't mean to. No, don't be. Naruto shook his head. It happened a long time ago. I'm over it. No, he thought with a pang of regret, he was not over it. Sakura's death still cut him like a knife at times. They could have had something special, something wonderful. That month, brief though it might have been, had been the best month of his life. They'd been each other's first. There had been talk of starting a life together, of raising a family, when their war was finally over. And then Obito gutted her like a pig. He would never forgive him for that. Never. Naruto was normally a peaceful person most of the time he was undertaking this, for that very reason, but for that man, he would make an exception. A very painful exception. Was she special to you? Kushina asked with renewed interest. Now that she knew he wasn't angry with her, she seemed intent to milk him for every little detail. Naruto was happy to oblige her. It was always better to focus on the happy times than the dour, after all. Yeah. Naruto felt a wistful smile tug at his lips. She was. What happened to her? She died. Kushina flinched. Naruto didn't blame her. Not their baka. That tickles. Even now, he could still hear her laughter. He felt his heart lurch a little bit. Although Sakura had long since passed, the pain of that passing still surprised him sometimes. It was like a punch in the gut. A soft touch on his sleeve drew his attention. Naruto blinked in surprise, startled to find Kushina's hand resting on his own. I'm sure she loved you very, very much. Naruto bit back a laugh. Ironic, that he was the one being consoled here. By his own mother. She didn't press him for details and she didn't tell him how sorry she was for his loss. She didn't berate him for pursuing the path of revenge in the first place. Since rescuing her only hours before, she had not even tried to pester him about what his true intentions were, which was more than a little puzzling. She just looked at him, with those overlarge violet eyes, and held his hand. She was just there, supporting him in silence and not asking anything of him. Mystified, Naruto felt like she understood a little of what he was saying. He found himself intertwining their fingers just to see what it felt like. Yeah, he said. After Sakura's death, the only time he really came into actual physical contact with other people in the future was when he was fighting them. That had been life with the Fourth Shinobi War. That was the life he'd lived after losing his love, a life full of loneliness and distrust. It was all he'd known for the last year of his existence. Feelings like those didn't fade away overnight. Must have been my smoldering good looks, he muttered to himself, reflecting on his change in appearance. It was difficult to accept he was here, trapped in the past, in a body he barely recognized as his own. Difficult but not unacceptable. Now that he was here, could change things for the better, correct all those mistakes made, help all those who suffered. But he had to be careful. If he changed too much, if he altered the timeline with impunity, he might wipe out lives that had yet to be born. Although he was still struggling to find a way to go about that. Come on. She rose and tugged on his hand, indicating a pair of sleeping bags she'd laid out near the firelight. You should probably get some sleep, Tte. We're going to have a long walk back to Konoha in the morning. Yeah, he said again. He allowed her to guide him off the log and they broke their contact as they started walking. Her long crimson swished behind her with each step, drawing his attention. It almost seemed to glow in the firelight, like the color of blood. He thought it was beautiful. He'd always envied not having his mother's pretty crimson hair. It was all he could do not to reach out and touch it. Just a little. By the way, I think you are. Kushina spun to face him abruptly, tresses twirling about her in a curtain of scarlet. Naruto stiffened, his hand frozen in the process of reaching out toward her. He asked. Handsome, I mean. The Uzumaki turned Uchiha chuckled, his spirits restored. He didn't mind accepting a compliment from his mother. Is that so? Kushina beamed at him, and her smile was like sunshine in the warmth of the fire. Let's get some sleep then, shall we? She turned in place. We're pretty far from the border, I think. We should be safe here. Her gaze flicked toward the flames in an unspoken question. Naruto nodded, stepping past her, eyes narrow with intent. I'll put out the fire. Without even thinking he flicked through a simple set of seals, drawing chakra into his stomach. Not for the first time was he grateful for expanding his repertoire of jutsu. Sweeten, Miserapa. With a brief exhalation he doused the flames with water, soaking the roaring blaze to its core. Allowing his eyes to adjust to the blackness, found that Kushina had already begun to tuck herself into the nearest sleeping bag, the smallest of smiles dancing on her lips. What? Oh, nothing. He could have sworn he heard her whistle in the gloom. It's just, that makes 3 now. Wind, fire, and now water. Naruto allowed himself to arch an eyebrow, So Kushina had seen him use that wind jutsu during his earlier scuffle with her two captors. Just how chakra natures do you have? Well, I'm a very skilled shinobi. Question mark. A flicker of motion in his peripherals brutally derailed his words and the train of thought, shattering his good mood like so much glass. Naruto frowned, his gaze shifting from Kushina, sliding across the clearing, tracking with the momvement. There, lingering just beyond the light of the fire. A shadow. But not just any shadow. Human, crouched low and toward the brush, obviously intent on remaining hidden. A shinobi. Shit. Naruto gave no outward sign that anything was wrong, he merely kept his gaze trained on Kushina, all the while eerily aware of their soon-to-be attacker closing in behind them. It was only when he caught sight of the telltale flash of a Kumogakure Hishiate that he permitted himself a soft snarl. Shit. Naruto. Kushina said his name, but she may as well have whispered to him for all the good it did. His mind was already working, trying to figure out where he'd gone wrong. Shit. He cursed himself for not realizing it sooner. Shinobi always operated in a four-man cell. Always. He'd taken out 3 of them guarding Kushina, which meant the 4th had likely been on recon at the time. Well, if he thought he'd get him with his guard down, he would be sorely disappointed. Slowly, the man pulled what looked like a giant shuriken from his back, committing a few precious seconds to drawing the ungainly weapon. A slow smile plucked at the corners of Naruto's mouth. He'd been waiting for just that opportunity. Gotcha. In the time it took the man to position the weapon, the former genin had already closed the distance between them. A faint draw upon what remained of the Kyuubi's chakra was more than enough. A kunai slid down his sleeve and into his awaiting hand, thrust forward now into the stomach of the stunned shinobi. Are there any more of you? Naruto hissed as he watched the light leave the man's eyes. Answer me. His target sneered, lips quirking in a triumphant smile. Fool. To the blonde's infinite dismay, the man vanished in a plume of smoke, leaving a harmless log behind. Substitution. Even as he registered the feint, the dull buzz of a thrown shuriken reached his ears, resounding louder and louder with each passing second. Kushina's scream ripped through his ears like a knife. Kushina. She was their target. There was no time to think, only for reaction. Naruto forcibly drew upon Kurama's chakra once more, willing the golden cloak to enfold his body, augmenting his already inane speed. He surged backwards from whence he came, shearing through entire branches in his haste, uncaring as they tore and slashed at his face. Please let me be in time. Try as she might, Uzumaki Kushina couldn't bring herself to understand what just happened. 1 minute she'd been chatting amicably with Naruto. She found she quite liked the Uchiha. He was smooth and easygoing, a good talker, nothing like the rest of his clan. He'd single-handedly saved her from being taken to Kumo, where death or torture or worse awaited her. That alone spoke volumes for his character. She still couldn't see why he'd fainted after she told him her name, but even that had become a fleeting thought once he'd opened up to her. And she maybe, kinda, sorta, found him, somewhat attractive. The next thing she knew, her savior narrowed his eyes in consternation, spat a foul oath beneath his breath and darted into the black of the woods. At first, Kushina had thought she'd upset him. Then she heard it, the distinctive whump of a substitution technique. Her blood turned to ice in her veins. An attack. But they were supposed to be safe here. The droning buzz of a massive shuriken filled her ears, shattering that misconception. Kushina yelped and staggered backwards, sparing herself a swift end. A warm ribbon of pain slashed across her shoulder as the deadly missile whirled past, leaving her stunned and shaken. Someone was screaming at her, but she couldn't hear them, her ears still ringing from her close call. Kushina. Naruto's voice rang out from behind her flank, the fear and desperation in his words piercing her deafness, rooting her in place, down. Kushina had only the time to blink as a golden blur cut across her V-zone, knocked her to the ground in an instant and hurling itself atop her. And not a moment too soon. The Uzumaki turned Uchiha grunted in surprise as something sharp slashed through his jumpsuit and bit into his lower back, the unfamiliar edge of a massive shuriken burrowing into his flesh, nearly causing his arms to buckle, threatening to throw him forward and onto her altogether. A thin line of blood leaked between his lips, spattering onto Kushina's cheek. She gawped at him, violet eyes wide, mouth frozen in an open oval. The words hitched in her throat, refusing to come no matter how much she might want them to. "Why?" she whispered. Naruto opened his mouth to speak, all that emerged was blood. Bakayuru, he hissed through clenched teeth, you act like cough I needed a reason to save ya. His lips quirked in a pained smile. After all, the same as me. When he bit off the word, lost my parents, no one ever complimented or recognized me. Being the bad student I was, I screwed up a lot during class on purpose, because I wanted to get everyone's attention. It didn't matter if they laughed at me, or cursed me. I couldn't get anyone's attention when I tried, so I acted like an idiot. It was like I was an outsider. You know how that feels, right? She did know how that felt. For the longest time she'd thought herself alone. Mikoto was one of her only friends, even so, she was oft on missions and couldn't be there for her when she needed her the most. Like now, for instance. Now as she lay there, helpless to do anything but watch bitter tears well in his eyes. It was tough. Right, Kushina? He asked. You were lonely, right? I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to feel that way. I'll try to do so meting about that, this time around. Kushina's heart nearly leapt into her throat as he slumped forward, falling atop her, collapsing into her arms like so much dead weight. She wanted to weep as his eyes slid shut, had he just died in her arms. No, he couldn't die, not here. Not now, no. Kushina gasped in surprise as her eyes snapped scarlet and slitted, a soundless sob exploding from the back of her throat. She knew Kyuubi was taking advantage of her emotionally unbalanced state, using this chink in her armor, to take control. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to stop him. Couldn't, as her hair stood on end, the crimson cloak creeping across her body, sheathing her like a second skin. Hate. She couldn't think of anything else. She hated fate, loathed it, despised it for giving her someone special, someone she could talk to, and then just as swiftly wrenching them away in the blink of an eye. No. A red haze draped itself over Kushina's vision, blinding her to all else. She felt the boiling chakra roil around her, twitching in anticipation of slaughter to be had. There, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. The one who'd killed Naruto. Murderer. She snarled at him and he gawped back at her, his mouth forming an open oval of outright disbelief. He took a small, staggering step backward. That was all he managed before she pounced, shrieking like a banshee. Chains of chakra, her one true talon, burst from her back, coiling forward even as she descended upon the Kumo Nin, a specter of death and destruction. Somehow, the man managed to draw his sword before she fell upon him, shrieking and spitting and slashing. It would do him little good. She felt cold steel bite into her cheek, but once before her chains seized upon it and ripped it from his grasp, leaving him open to for her fingers now claws to rip through his white vest and into his stomach. Monster. The man rasped. Shut the up, she screamed, baring her fangs in a sibilant snarl. I'll kill you, Tte Bane. Her chakra chains hit him squarely in the chest and slammed him back into a tree. He didn't scream, didn't cry out, but his mouth formed a tight grimace, and his eyes looked up at her, pleading. Mercy, they seemed to say, please don't kill me. Kushina wasn't feeling merciful. Her chains thrust deeper, driving through flesh and bone, pinning him to the bark of the tree, skewering his body. She held him under the arms, and looked into those eyes and watched the life drain out of them. Memories of loneliness flooded her and she felt the rage rise. Alone. She was alone again. The one person who had saved her, the only individual who'd shown her that smile, was no longer with her. He was gone. And it was this one's fault. Something inside Kushina twisted at the realization. She raised a clawed hand, intent on carving up the Kumo Nin's corpse. She would slaughter him, tear him to pieces. She'd. Oi. A hand closed around her wrist, heedless of the scalding chakra searing into their skin. Kushina rounded on them, ready to cut down her attacker. Instead she jerked back as if she'd been burned. Naruto. She found the Uchiha looming over her, peering down at her with intent, Sharingan blazing into her crimson orbs. Scarlet met scarlet and the latter yielded. Relief flooded her like a wave, obliterating the rage before it had any chance to mount any sort of counterattack. Bereft of a means to control her any longer, Kyuubi's chakra dissipated, evaporating around her like so much steam. He's dead, the Uchiha rumbled. No need to carve up his corpse. Kushina's eyes widened. She had not been expecting this at all. But I thought I was dead. Naruto arched an eyebrow. The corners of his mouth lifted, quirking into a wry grin. Sorry, but I won't die that easily. He was alive, but his wound, she'd thought. Baka, she sobbed, her fists curling feebly against his chest. Baka baka baka, I thought you died, thought you were dead. NNRGH. Naruto doubled over in her embrace with a groan, touching a hand to his back. His hand came away covered with blood. You're hurt. Just a flesh wound. He chuckled, waving her concerns aside. Don't worry, I'll heal. What d'ya mean you'll? Shish. He hushed her. Let me have a look at you. Naruto was painfully aware of what he'd done. In saving Kushina a second time, he'd unknowingly mirrored the actions of Iruka-sensei. But it was the truth. His mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi before him, she had already suffered torment before it was sealed inside her. He felt a touch of guilt, at feigning his death back there, but he'd had no choice. That shuriken had been coated with poison, it had taken time and a sizable portion of Kurama's chakra to purge it from his system. But now he knew for certain. He need no longer ask Kushina Uzumaki if she was currently the container of the Nine Tails. Now he knew. You saw that, huh? She seemed almost sheepish. I did. Naruto could already feel his back wound closing, evidently he'd retained his tenant's regenerative properties. His hand, however, proved to be another matter. He'd grabbed onto Kushina whilst she was wrapped up in Kurama's chakra, that one wouldn't be healing anytime soon. But that was neither here nor there. He'd expunged the poison from his system, he had to make certain Kushina, been able to do the same. Slowly, so as not to startle before. Hold still. He placed a hand to her cheek, another to her shoulder, his palms radiating green light. You've been poisoned. I need to draw out the venom. Sakura had, at his insistence, taught him some of her medical ninjutsu. He absolutely sucked at it most of the time, and it drained his chakra like no tomorrow, but he at least knew enough to safely neutralize foreign toxins. She squirmed once she saw the ravaged state of his hand but complied all the same. Do you hate me? She whispered as he tended her wounds. Her words were soft, forlorn. He would hate her, just like everyone else did. Everyone except Mikoto, and even she didn't know the truth. What's this all of a sudden? You saw it. Kushina pantomimed a gesture at her stomach, unable to quell the hopelessness starting to swell inside of her. What I have, inside me. I'm a monster, hey. She cried out in surprise as the Uchiha seized her by the shoulders and shook her roughly. His coal-black eyes were dyed with chakra, flaring the distinctive crimson color of his clan. His chakra, it felt cold. Like she was looking at someone else, staring into the eye of a complete and total stranger. His tomo entranced her, spiraling hypnotically before her face, little more than a blur before her eyes. He gripped her tighter still, shoved his visage dangerously close to hers. Never, he hissed, words rough with anger, call yourself that again. But I. Never. Naruto growled, his tone left no room for argument. Why the hell would I hate you for something you're not? At his words, Kushina felt herself begin to break, all the barriers she'd built in her mind come crashing down around her ears. When the tears came, she couldn't stop them. This was all too much. Too much to hope for, let alone dream. In the span of only a few hours her life had gone from a lonely little existence to this. She hadn't expected anyone to look for her to begin with, let alone rescue her, and all because of her hated crimson hair. Arigato, she whispered, hugging him tightly, burying her face in his chest in a vain effort to hide away her tears. Thank you so much, Naruto-kun. She felt the tension ease from his shoulders as she held him, felt him relax albeit marginally into her arms. His heart thudded warmly against her ear, a soft, reassuring rhythm that promised her all would be alright. A sudden swirl of leaves broke that promise. Kushina felt words leave her as a young man of roughly 15 years or so emerged from a body flicker. His shaggy blonde hair framed cold blue eyes, eyes that told the world he'd come here been expecting a fight. She felt her heart lurch at the realization. Manato had been following her, too. He'd come to save her. But he hadn't been expecting someone to beat him to the punch. To her, she watched the emotions flicker over his face, confusion, suspicion, sadness, and anger. It was gone too quickly for her to tell. Kushina, he paused as his eyes fell upon Naruto, and her close proximity to him. His face fell. It seems I'm interrupting something. I can always come back later if you'd like. Minato. She sputtered in surprise, scrambling to her feet. When did you? Naruto scrubbed his hand against bloodshot eyes, silently fighting the urge to simply pass out. Because this had to be a dream. It must have been a dream. He had to forcefully slow his hammering heart. Both his mother and father were standing before him, arguing. It took everything he had not to embrace them on the spot. He chose to maintain his silence as the pair conversed, Kushina explaining all that happened between Naruto's arrival and Minato's. When she finished, I don't think we've met. His father smiled wanly, extending a hand. I'm Minato. Naruto. He clasped the youth's hand and shook, not trusting himself to give away his true surname, not at the moment. Uchiha Naruto. Uchiha. Minato's head tilted to the side slightly. I thought you looked familiar. Familiar. You must be mistaken. Naruto put on his best poker face. I've never seen you before in my life. No, I'm sure I've seen you somewhere before. Minato argued. Look, I don't know what you're talking about. Naruto emphasized with a shake of the head. Minato, will you stop arguing with him, Tte-bane. Kushina snapped at the both of them. Naruto-kun saved my life. So stop pestering him. Both boys bristled but for entirely different reasons, though they each knew better than to risk the wrath of raging redhead. Minato seemed more hurt by it than anything else. Naruto simply sighed in disbelief. He was amazed with his own ability to keep a mostly straight face upon seeing his mother and father. If he hadn't met them previously in his mindscape, he probably would have been acting like total fanboy right at the moment. Thankfully he had grown up in leaps and bounds during the course of the war, and knew how to keep a straight face when he really needed to. It was perhaps a bit easier to deal with than it would have been otherwise considering he was currently older than his future father and mother. Of course, his screwed-up DNA probably kept them from recognizing the similarity, too. Shall we move on? He indicated the horizon. The sun was just now beginning to rise. It looks like we won't be getting much sleep after all. The next afternoon, as they reached the gates, Naruto nearly facepalmed from frustration. The return trip had been fairly uneventful, therein lay the problem. He'd felt his father's eyes boring into his back for most of the way, and while the two of them remained pleasant with one another, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd done something to irk him. Kushina, on the other hand, practically glowed. She'd kept him occupied the entire length of their travels and such, proving a welcome distraction and conversation. It was almost like having a little sister. While he knew rescuing Kushina had been the right decision, he still wondered if he should have waited for his father or someone else to swoop in and save the day. He'd acted recklessly and without thinking, and possibly already altered events beyond his control. But no, his true frustration stemmed from the keen look both guards were giving him at the gate. Clearly they recognized Minato and Kushina, but Naruto, not so much. And well within good reason. He'd been so wrapped up in his plans to change the future that he'd failed to recognize a fatal flaw in the present. Naruto did not exist in Konoha. To make matters worse, he was still wearing his old Hishiate. If someone were to stop him and ask who he was, if someone did not recognize him, he was toast. Already, Kushina must have seen him squirm somehow, because he felt her gaze fall upon him. I didn't exactly have time to ask for permission when I went after you. He whispered, lying through his teeth and scrubbing at the back of his head with a hand. It was kind of a rush job. The kunoichi's cheeks promptly swelled a scintillating shade of scarlet. She stiffened her posture and flicked her eyes toward Naruto. She blinked. Ahahaha. If you keep saying things like that, I'm going to fall for you. Did you say something? Nothing. Kushina spluttered. Nothing at all. You there. The Anbu inclined its head curtly before him. Lord Hokage wishes to speak with you regarding your retrieval of Uzumaki Kushina. Also, Makoto-sama wishes me to inform you, she awaits your arrival at the earliest convenience. You are to come with us. Without another word, they turned and encircled him. Kushina searched for her rescuer's eyes, but they stared fixedly at the ground before them, like cold, sharp onyx. She felt her chest twist uncomfortably at the sight. Whatever the Anbu had said must have badly rattled Makoto-sama. Naruto's first instinct was to decry the words, to deny that he was an Uchiha. His second was to ask just who this Mikoto person was and what she wanted with him. His third and final decision was to take a deep breath and clear his mind. Compose himself. And above all, remain calm. Hopefully his presence in the past hadn't changed too much already. And there you have it. Naruto finally sets foot in the village. However, the question remains, will he receive a warm welcome from the Uchiha? Or a cold one? To be honest, originally, I wanted to go a different route with this, to have everyone in the village remember Naruto as an Uchiha, someone whom we know he is not. Then I realized that just wouldn't do at all. Naruto wants to be seen as himself, not someone he isn't. Pairing is still up in the air, but Mikoto is most likely going to be involved, although I will gladly take any other recommendations that are offered. Kushina's falling for him, but the question does remain, will Naruto ever reciprocate her feelings? I'm leaning toward yes, in time. I may even include Tsunade, seeing as how the age gap has shrunk to almost nothing now. So, in the immortal words of Atlas, review, would you kindly? And enjoy the preview. It's a long albeit disjointed one. Consider it proof I fully intend to continue this story. Preview. Well, hello there handsome. Naruto opened his eyes and turned in the direction where the voice had come from, only to come face to face with possibly the most gorgeous girl he'd ever seen. He found himself peering into the coal-black eyes of another Uchiha. A lithe beauty with long, lustrous black hair and a body that, despite being clad in Konohagakure fatigues, would have made even Tsunade Ba-chan green with envy. She smiled warmly and she strode to meet him, claiming the seat opposite him on the bar without so much as an invitation. There was a cool, aloof air about her, as though she existed solely to strike fear into the heart of others. He could appreciate that in a woman. Have we met? Naruto failed to bite back that inquiry before it could leave his lips. While he didn't know her, from her gaze, it was obvious the woman knew him. No, we haven't, the kunoichi replied. But I'm sure Kushina's told you all about me. ? I'm Makoto. Pity. She shrugged her shoulders. Father won't like that. But thanks, for whatever it's worth. Naruto almost barked out a laugh before he realized the repercussions of his actions. Instead of Minato saving his mother this time around, he'd been the one to do it. His actions weren't helping his case any. He had to calm down and think things through rationally from here on out. The slightest action could have untold repercussions in the future. Makoto. A male voice exclaimed. What are you doing? The smile shattered on Makoto's face like so much glass. Before Naruto could protest, she looped an arm in his and drew dangerously close to him, bosom pressing into his arm. While he himself was no stranger to intimacy, he still felt a flush rise in his cheeks as she did this to him. He was, after all, only human. At her. Play along. She hissed in his ear, mere moments before a stern-looking man appeared via Shuzen. What is the meaning of this, Makoto? He demanded. What does it look like I'm doing, Fugaku? She smiled, scooting closer to Naruto. I thought I'd introduce myself to our long-lost clansman. Naruto nearly dropped his chopsticks, he knew that name. In his youth before the massacre, he'd gotten into enough trouble to learn it well, having often found himself before the man's desk to be brought to the clan's so-called justice for his pranks. Just as he knew this man would someday be the father of Sasuke and Itachi. His left hand twitched with the sudden desire to kill this man. After what Sasuke had done, he'd be doing a world of good by ending his father's life. This fool. Fugaku scoffed. He's no kin of ours. He just walks in here and claims to be one of us. For all we know, he could be an enemy spy. Snick. He blinked in surprise as a thin red line opened across his cheek. Naruto retraced his hand, having been the one to throw the knife with deadly accuracy. Care to run that by me again? Kami, I am so sick of him. Makoto groaned the moment he was out of earshot. All he does is prattle on like an idiot. He isn't he? Naruto muttered into his drink. Makoto shook her head, raven tresses swaying from side to side. That's not it. I'm the representative of the whole clan. If the clan is in a bad position, I must protect it. I'm an only child and my father isn't getting any younger. So the job of looking after the clan must be left to me. My father is the supervisor of that job, so that's probably why he pays so much attention to me. But with conversations between us alone. Today, when Otu-san spoke with me, he spoke of you, and what you did for Kushina. You were bold, reckless, not a thing like Fugaku, not even in the slightest, and because of that. I think he's a bit jealous of you, frankly. Naruto groaned. Well, Isn't that just lovely? Underscore. Kaden. Fugaku snarled. Gukaku no jutsu. Naruto balked as the stream of fire gushed toward him. Unbidden the memory was there, hand signs and all. Naruto reeled as a wealth of information flooded his mind. It was as if every jutsu Madara had ever seen, ever mastered, was now his own. And he knew just which one to use. Steeling himself, he drew in a deep breath, kneading the chakra in his stomach, giving it shape and form. If one wanted to extinguish a flame, they need only give rise to an even more powerful inferno, by which they might overwhelm and extinguish it. Fugaku must have sensed the sudden movement of chakra, because his eyes bulged. That's Kaden. Naruto spat. Goka Mekyaku. Great fire annihilation. He exhaled mightily, expelling all the chakra he'd been stoking in his lungs. Bad blood. Everything will be fine, everything will be fine, everything will be fine. Naruto chanted the words like a mantra in his head as he drew nearer and nearer to the Hokage's office, Anbu honor guard in tow. More like an escort. The old man probably didn't want him bolting the first chance he got. Naruto didn't blame them. After all, he had shown up with little to no warning, rescued their Jinchuriki, brought her back to the village, and then marched right in their front door. It certainly didn't help that he was dressed like a leaf shinobi. Kami, he was going to have fun explaining that one. Even more so his newfound appearance. On one hand, he could simply have them bring in a Yamanaka was Inoichi around at this point, to examine his mind and memories. On the other hand, Naruto wasn't all that certain he wanted to reveal whether he was from the future just yet. Already his presence here had far-reaching complications. He was painfully aware just how incredibly he'd mightied things up between his parents by rescuing Kushina before Minato had a chance to intervene. But that was why he was here, wasn't it? To change things, prevent the future from ever coming to pass. Not if you erase yourself from existence in the process, Bakayuru. His common sense smacked him upside the head. Naruto cringed at the thought. Although, it also made him wonder. What would have happened if his mother and father never got together to begin with? Well, he wouldn't exist, for starters. And if he never existed, then Obito never attacked the leaf. And if Obito never attacked the leaf arg. Major headache. Naruto frowned, his pace slowing almost imperceptibly as he mulled the matter over. His guards didn't like that. Not one bit. Keep moving, outsider. One of the Anbu elbowed him in the back, forcing him to keep up. Naruto bit back a growl and valiantly fought the urge to Rasengan the man and the rest of his squad into a nearby wall. Oh, and it would have been so easy, too. But if he pulled a stunt like that now, he was liable to get himself thrown out of the village before he even had a chance to explain why he was here. And just how am I going to explain that, anyway? He wondered. He did his best as they drew close, mentally preparing himself for what lay on the other side. No fainting. Check. No spazzing out. Check. Cold sweat. Check. Just as he was about to set foot into the Ofifs and prepare himself for the lie of a lifetime and possibly the most epic fail in existence, a cold hand settled upon his shoulder. Hold, mortal. The Uchiha nearly jumped out of his skin. Because there, hovering before him in the black, was a face he'd hoped to never, ever see again. The Shinagami. Naruto opened his mouth to voice a reply, only to realize the guards around him had ceased moving. Everything had ceased. Time itself had stopped, the colors of the world having faded to a grim black and white. They were alone, frozen here in this moment of time. Thousands of thoughts ricocheted in his mind, countless words sought to leave his lips as those dread eyes peered out at him from within macabre grin. In the end he settled for one. You. The Reaper inclined its head minutely. Well met, my emissary. That brought Naruto up short. Wait, what? He frowned, not just at his newfound title. You still remember me? His reply was met with a frown and a snort. I am the god of death, boy. Did you not think I would leave you unsupervised when the fate of the entire world is at stake? Well, kinda. Snorting, the Shinigami shoot its head, even then those eerie eyes never left his, not even for a minute. I thought I ought to inform you of something before you continue on your quest. And before I speak, I should caution you, do not panic. It paused for a moment, and when it finally spoke, its response was stern, almost stoic in its reply. The you, as you know yourself, has already ceased to exist. There was a silence. When Naruto didn't vanish from existence, a low growl left his lips. You wanna run that by me again, buddy? Silence. The Reaper reprimanded, its tone strident. By altering your DNA, you no longer exist as Uzumaki Naruto. Rather, you are an Uchiha. You already know this. What you do not know is thus, all traces of your former self were eradicated the moment I first laid my power upon you in limbo. Naruto blanched. He didn't like where this conversation was going. Please tell me that doesn't mean what I think it means. Shinagami nodded. The old you may yet still be born in this timeline, but any effect his existence might have had upon you has been nullified, my emissary. At Naruto's continued silence, the Grim sighed. Perhaps I am over-explaining. Allow me to simplify. Say something foul were to befall Uzumaki Kushina, that she were to die, say, at the hands of an enemy shinobi. Were that to happen, even were your mother to perish, and those last traces of your old self eradicated, the you, as you now know yourself, would still continue on to exist. Do you understand? He could feel a headache coming on, but the Uzumaki turned Uchiha nodded anyway. Just what the hell did you do to me? Naruto hissed. Not just my face, not just my DNA, but even my destiny. I barely recognize myself anymore. I made a wager against fate. I believe you mortals call it a gamble. The Reaper chortled then. It was a deep, throaty sound. You truly are a unique existence. Your mind and your memories belong to you still, but should another try to pry into those memories, and I suspect the fools of this era soon will, they will see what the you of this time has seen. False memories indistinguishable from a true experience bequeathed to that body you now possess. You may wish to thank me for this gift. But know this. Those golden eyes seemed to brighten at that moment, glowing with eerie intent as the death god loomed closer, its breath cold as ice upon his face. You must keep who you truly are, a secret. I shudder to think what might happen if the timeline comes unraveled any more than it already has. Are you sure I can't just kill myself and be done with it? The blonde growled, placing a hand to his now throbbing temple. It's beginning to sound a hell of a lot more simple. You will not. The Shinigami's voice was like a thunderclap in his ears. I have not bargained my very being on this gamble only to have you end your life a second time. All right, Naruto sighed. Loosen up and take a joke, will ya, Reaper? I do not, loosen up, in my business. It replied. Now, you are going to be questioned. Interrogated. No, really. His deadpan was ourly concealed. Silence. Shinagami snapped back. Now, listen well. This is what you are going to say. Naruto gulped as the Shinigami finished its explanation. That had to be the mosted up lie ever. You do realize I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, right? I am well aware. The Reaper retorted as the colors of the world began to return, the flow of time moving inexorably ever onward. And I trust you to succeed. Before he could reply, the Shinigami was gone, leaving him alone with his escort. Thankfully, neither seemed to have noticed the little time lapse. One of them shoved him towards the doors a tad too roughly, snickering as the blonde stumbled toward the office. He did his best to push all thoughts of revenge from his mind, refusing to show weakness in the face of these fools. Here goes nothing. Naruto tapped softly on the door with his fist and announced his presence. Come in. Tears nearly sprang to his eyes. Upon entering, he found himself staring at a pair of familiar faces, lacking the liver spots of old age as well as stark gray hair, and another which he immediately recognized and gravitated towards. He would have recognized her anyway even without the Juin attire and Hishiate, even so he knew those that hair, that bust, just about anywhere. Even so, his jaw nearly dropped to the floor. Ba-chan. What did you just call me, punk? The young woman, she couldn't be more than 20, maybe 25, bristled angrily at his remark. Naruto had just enough time to register the remark before she cannoned forward, fingers clenched into a fist. Less than a day ago, that punch would have hit him. Now, his Uchiha blood sang at the sight of her attack, at the sound of battle. She seemed to slow in his peripheral vision, as though she were moving underwater. He wasn't quite sure when he moved or how, for that matter, only that he did, drifting forwards even as the door shattered to timbers behind his back. Cammy, but she was so slow. Or was he simply faster now? Oi. Whatever the case, she proved no match for him. His fingers locked around her wrist in a vice and gave a sharp twist, breaking the bone like a twig. Snick. She gasped in pained surprise, but Naruto was still moving, sweeping her legs out from beneath, forcing her to the floor with a strength he didn't know he had. Even as she tried to struggle, his fingers found her throat. Sununade froze, eyes bulging. Because this was Sununade, younger than he remembered her, this was the past after all, but still the future 5th Hokage nonetheless. And he'd just beaten her in unarmed combat. It all happened so swiftly. Realizing his mistake, he swiftly jerked backwards, leaving a baffled Sununade gawping up at him. My apologies. I tend to react like that when someone attacks me. Sorry about calling you that too, he continued, at the murderous glint in her gaze. Must have mistook you for someone else. He held out a hand for he, and slowly, warily, she accepted it. I certainly hope so, Sununade said with eerie calm as she pressed a hand to her broken wrist, livid honey eyes bored into her future successor. Because whoever you are, if you ever say that to me again. No. Naruto waved his hands rapidly and performed a perfunctory bow. It was a mistake. My bad. If you're quite done haranguing him, Sununade, Sarutobi's gravely voice interjected, I'd like to speak with our guest. Alone. But sensei. Dismissed. Sununade looked as though she might say something else, might protest for a final time, but in the end, she resigned herself to a silent retreat, tending to her battered arm as she departed. Naruto turned to regard the Hokage as his fellow blonde gave them their silence. He was acting rather strange. Funny, he didn't remember the old man being quite this stern back in the day. The thought brought a frown to his lips. Had he made yet another mistake already? You are Sarutobi Hiruzen, right? You would be correct, the Sandaime replied, steepling his fingers together. The problem remains, however, that I do not know who you are. Let us begin with what we do know, then. His aging face seemed to tense as Naruto looked on, his old eyes turning harsh and stern. First, you retrieved Uzumaki Kushina from enemy forces at great peril to yourself and returned her to this village, safe and sound. For this, you have my most sincere gratitude. Second, for some reason or another you're impersonating a Konoha shinobi, because I've never seen you before in my life. Third, judging by your appearance, and that little stunt you just pulled back there with my student, you are undoubtedly an Uchiha, which also strikes me as strange, because, for lack of a better term, you don't seem to have that proverbial stick up your. Have I missed anything? Nope. Naruto had to forcibly sink teeth into his lower lip to keep himself laughing at the last. I think you've just about covered everything and anything. Not quite. Sarutobi fixed him with a steely gaze. There is still the matter of who you are and what you want. Now, because you've chosen to be courteous to me, I shall extend the same courtesy to you. I will ask you one final time. Who are you? Naruto dithered a moment longer, wondering just how much he ought to reveal. He'd already altered events by saving his mother, who was to say what would happen if he revealed he was from the future. Slowly the Junin opened his eyes, letting the gathered teardrops run down the side of his face towards his ears. Just what the hell was he going to do? Even if they did believe his story, there was no way in hell they'd accept his change in appearance. At the least, they'd throw him in a mental hospital. At worst, they'd condemn him to death. The Shinagami's explanation rang through his mind once more. This is what you are going to say. He felt his eyes begin to burn again. He knew what answer he had to give. Do you know the name Uchiha Madara? There was a silence. When the third next spoke, there was an audible edge to his words. Surely you're not claiming to be. PSH. Naruto snorted and waved the Sandaime's concerns aside. There could be no taking his words back now, the only way out was forward. Of course I'm not Madara. I'd have to be like 100 years old. Much to his own consternation he steeled himself, drew a deep breath, and continued the lie, continued to weave this fine, delicate tapestry of falsehood. I'm his descendant. What? Did I stutter? Naruto forced a tuft of arrogance into his voice. Easy enough when you knew someone like Sasuke and watched the words work their magic. Uchiha Madara is my grandfather. I am of his blood. Must I demonstrate myself further? Sarutobi paled and promptly crossed himself. Twice. Naruto watched a myriad of emotions flicker across his face. A descendant of that man, standing here before them. Now that he looked, the man did bear a passing resemblance to the legendary Uchiha, but no. That couldn't be possible. Madara didn't have any descendants unless he'd fathered a child before being slain by Hashirama in the Valley of End. And if such a child had grown and produced yet another child. He slammed the lid shut on that train of thought before it could consume him. I'm afraid I'll need more proof than your word. See is believing, after all. Naruto sighed and released chakra into his coal-black eyes, awakening the bloodline bestowed upon him. Sarutobi stiffened as the Sharingan abruptly emerged, its triple tomo swirling fiercely angrily in each eye. Naruto bit back a grimace of his own once he beheld his reflection in the Sandame's slate-gray stare. Madara's eyes were still evolving. Rapidly. Would he unlock the Mangekyo at this rate, and lose his eyesight before he could accomplish his goal? He hoped not. Those eyes. Hiruzen visibly swallowed, as though he'd seen something in them Naruto had not. I see. Gathering himself up with an effort, he forced himself back to the table once more. Why have you come here then, after all this time? Surely you could have left Kushina at the gate. I mean, at Naruto's thunderous expression he was quick to amend himself, you must have had a life outside these walls. My father recently passed on. Another lie. But before he did, he told me that all Uchiha were welcome here, and as I find myself growing lonely, I decided to stay. Is that a problem? Not at all. Sarutobi seemed to welcome this change of topic with open arms. If you wish to come into the hidden leaf, that can be arranged. But on to other matters. Where did you get the headband? He asked. This. Naruto pretended to consider the Hishiate for a moment. It was passed down to me. A trophy of sorts. I'll have to have someone validate that. A small smile etched across his visage, like a crack scrawling across stone. But if you're telling the truth, I'd be more than willing to welcome you into our village. He rose out of his chair and pulled up a seat. You may wish to make yourself comfortable then, stranger. You may be here quite a while. My name is Naruto. At last he thought to himself, some truth. Naruto, then. Sarutobi confirmed. I'll have someone come by to collect you shortly. As you wish. Naruto replied slowly, choosing his words with the utmost of care. Send a Yamanaka to pick my brain. I have nothing to hide. Hours later. Some hours later, Naruto chewed on his bottom lip as he wandered through the streets of Konoha. It had been a long time since he had been able to walk through the village like this, especially since it had first been destroyed back when he was 16. They had done a very good job rebuilding it, but it just hadn't been the same. Especially once it was destroyed the second time. Another thing that had slightly unnerved him at first was seeing so many Uchiha. He hadn't gotten around to figuring out how he would prevent the massacre yet, but it would still be years before that would happen, at the very least. On the other hand, that made it of utmost importance that he try to convince the Hokage to get the Uchiha to merge with the village more than they currently were, lest they risked alienating themselves even further in the future. And then there was the matter of Tobi and Uchiha Madara, not to mention, ouch. Naruto touched a hand to his head and fought to keep from cringing. His head was still throbbing, a side effect of having his memories so thoroughly inspected. As the Shinagami had said, that which was seen were not the memories of Uzumaki Naruto, but Uchiha Naruto. Who would have thought the god of death could do such a thing? Not him. It still riled him to be seen as an Uchiha, when at least on the inside he remained an Uzumaki. By Kami this was going to take some getting used to. Humming as he walked along, he got the occasional glance from villagers, some of whom would give him a small nod of acknowledgement and maybe a smile before continuing on their business. Others, many of them Uchiha, scowled at him, likely due to their inherent suspicion of Uchiha Madara. Now that he'd claimed to be the man's descendant, it was only natural that suspicion be abound. Yet another big difference: previously he was either completely ignored or treated like a celebrity, especially after Pain's attack. This right now was a happy, if not nice, medium. I guess I could get used to this. He rubbed at an itch on his arm, not used to having them sheathed in long sleeves like they currently were. The Hokage had gotten him a small apartment to use and a few sets of standard Jonin clothing, along with a few sleeveless vests and the standard Jonin jacket. The outfit was similar to that which most Anbu wore, but he currently didn't have a mask or arm guards. That lofty station was well beyond his reach at present. After all, he'd only just been allowed into the village after the Hokage revealed him to half the damn populace, and he was fairly certain his goals didn't include joining the infamous Black Ops anytime soon. As for now, he'd be more than happy with a warm meal of ramen. The scent of it caught his nose, causing his head to snap back around. He spun about, seeking its source. There, standing in all its early glory, Ichiraku ramen. One miso ramen, please. It was all he could do to keep the grin from his face as he rushed inside and took a seat. All his strength was focused on preventing his knees from knocking together as he awaited his long-favored treat. The chef took his order and ducked back behind the curtain, leaving the Uzumaki-turned-Uchiha to wait impatiently for his food. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Finally, just as he was about to check on him, a voice prickled at his ear. "Well, hello there, handsome." Naruto opened his eyes and turned in the direction where the voice had come from, only to come face to face with possibly the most gorgeous girl he'd ever seen. He found himself peering into the coal-black eyes of another Uchiha. A lithe beauty with long, lustrous black hair and a body that despite being clad in Konohagakure fatigues would have made even Tsunade Ba-chan green with envy. She smiled warmly as she strode to meet him, claiming the seat opposite him on the bar without so much as an invitation. There was a cool, aloof air about her, as though she existed solely to strike fear into the heart of others. He could appreciate it, in a woman, but there was something about this one that instantly put him on guard. Dangerous. Have we met? Naruto failed to bite back that inquiry before it could leave his lips. While he didn't know her, from her gaze, it was obvious the woman knew him. "No, we haven't," the kunoichi replied. "But I'm sure Kushina's told you all about me." "I'm Mikoto," she continued, pausing, peering at him. "I honestly have no idea who you are." Naruto shook his head. "Pity." She rolled her shoulders. "Father won't like that. But thanks for being polite, for whatever it's worth. That aside, I understand I have you to thank for saving my best friend earlier." Naruto almost barked out a laugh before he realized the repercussions of his actions. Instead of Minato saving his mother this time around, he'd been the one to do it. His actions weren't helping his case any. He had to calm down and think things through rationally from here on out. The slightest action could have untold repercussions in the future. As a matter of fact, "Mikoto!" a male voice exclaimed, cutting him off. "There you are." The smile shattered on Mikoto's face like so much glass. Before Naruto could protest, she looped an arm in his and drew dangerously close to him, bosom pressing into his arm. While he himself was no stranger to intimacy, he still felt a flush rise in his cheeks as she did this to him. He was, after all, only human. And those pressing against him. "Play along," she hissed in his ear, mere moments before a stern-looking man appeared via Shuzen. Once again, Naruto felt that faint sense of déjà vu. He'd seen this man somewhere before. But where? "What is the meaning of this, Mikoto?" the man demanded. "What are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing, Fugaku?" She smiled, scooting closer to Naruto. "I thought I'd introduce myself to our long-lost clansman." Naruto nearly dropped his chopsticks. He knew that name. In his youth before the massacre, he'd gotten into enough trouble to learn it well, having often found himself before the man's desk to be brought to the clan's so-called justice for his pranks. Just as he knew this man would someday be the father of Sasuke and Itachi. His left hand twitched with the sudden desire to kill this man. After what Sasuke had done, he'd be doing a world of good by ending his father's life. "This fool," Fugaku scoffed, scowling at Naruto. "He's no kin of ours, regardless of what Lord Hokage says. Anyone with dark hair and black eyes can waltz in here and claim to be one of us. But what proof does he have, I wonder? For all we know, he could be an enemy spy." Snick. He blinked in surprise as a thin red line opened across his cheek, spilling crimson down his collar. Naruto retracted his hand back onto the counter, having been the one to throw the kinif with deadly accuracy. His eyes narrowed upon Fugaku. His Sharingan must have activated somehow, because the man visibly flinched when he met his gaze. "Care to run that by me again?" he hissed. "You don't frighten me, outsider." The Uchiha snapped back. "And no class like you is nothing." "No class? Is that so?" Naruto quipped, detaching himself from Mikoto, swiveling to face the man. "Then why does it look like you're about to piss your pants?" He had the succinct satisfaction of hearing Mikoto's laughter. Why did that sound bring such perverse pleasure to him anyway? And his grin only grew as he beheld his adversary's reaction. Fugaku's face flared 5 different shades of red. "Why you dare?" "Oh, I dare." The former blonde was rising from his stool now, ramen completely forgotten in the wake of his anger. "What are you going to do about it, little man?" Ah, the sweet irony of it all. As an adult, Naruto was a good head and shoulders taller than Fugaku, towering over him like a giant. To think he'd once feared this man in his youth. There was nothing he could do to hurt him now, he was invincible. Untouchable. And if this belligerent fool thought he stood a chance in hell, he'd probably try and. Training Ground 7. The words were little more than a snarl. This evening, with Mikoto-sama as my witness, I will prove just how worthless you were before the clan, worm. I'm shaking in my sandals. Naruto growled, knowing the man had just made a fatal mistake. With to another word, Fugaku rounded on his heel and vanished in a shushin. Kami, I am so sick of him. Makoto groaned the moment he was out of earshot. All he does is prattle on and preen like a complete idiot. The clan this, the clan that. He's not even the heir and he goes on about it more than I do, for God's sake. Sighing, she pressed her head to the counter, as though she could somehow bury her woes there. He isn't he? Naruto muttered into his drink. Just like Sasuke, he added to himself. Makoto shook her head at that, raven tresses swaying from side to side. That's not it. I'm the representative of the whole clan. If the clan is in a bad position, I must protect it. I'm an only child and my father isn't getting any younger. So the job of looking after the clan must be left to me. My father is the supervisor of that job, so that's probably why he pays so much attention to me. But with conversations between us alone. Today, when Otu-san spoke with me, he spoke of you, and what you did for Kushina. You were bold, reckless, not a thing like Fugaku, not even in the slightest, and because of that. I think he's a bit jealous of you, frankly. Me. Makoto nodded. A long-lost descendant of Uchiha Madara, who wouldn't be jealous of you. She nudged him playfully with her shoulder. So, are you going to accept his challenge? Naruto's frown flipped itself upside down. You bet your pretty little I am. Her onyx gaze pinioned him. You know, it's a good thing you're cute. His grin was positively beatific. I try. That evening. Are you prepared, fool? Hi, I'm quite ready to kick your. Fugaku's expression turned murderous. You worm. Naruto stifled a yawn as his so-called rival spewed yet another vitriolic retort. This was getting old. When were they going to start? The sun was just beginning to settle in for the vening, casting their grounds in 7 shades of flame. An unbidden breeze blew through his tattered black locks, stirring the dead leaves at his feet and wiping them up into a frenzy. He watched them blow away, fluttering across the horizon until even his newfound eyes could no longer track them. Reluctantly, he allowed his sight to track across the remainder of the clearing. Fugaku had been good on his word. There were at least several dozen clan members crowded into the training grounds, each eager to see him succeed. Or fail. The latter wouldn't be happen. He didn't recognize any of them, but then again, he'd only ever really known Sasuke and Itachi. Makoto, as heir to the clan, stood at the forefront with her father, a large, grizzled old man who looked as though he'd seen more than his fair share of missions in his time. But it was the former who stepped forward, took her place between them. She looked positively regal in her kimono, the fabric a dark shade of dusk, almost as if she were in mourning. Her visage was anything but. She seemed almost pleased. Uchiha Naruto. When she spoke, her tone was solemn, bordering on reverent. Fugaku has challenged your claim as Uchiha. Do you accept this challenge? Naruto grinned. Hell yes. He was going to enjoy this. A slight smile lifted her lips. Very well. Nodding, she turned to face the latter. Uchiha Fugaku. Do you swear by the clan to fight with all your. Hi. He cut her off mid-sentence, already inhaling. Mikoto scowled and took a sharp step backwards, returning to her father's side. Then, begin. Kaden. Fugaku snarled, expelling a great stream of flame. Gukakyu no Jutsu. Naruto scoffed and made to move, instead he balked as the stream of fire gushed toward him. Why couldn't he move? Why? Unbidden the memory was there, hand signs and all. Naruto reeled as a wealth of information flooded his mind. It was as if every jutsu Madara had ever seen, ever mastered, was now his own. And he knew just which one to use. Steeling himself, he drew in a deep breath, kneading the chakra in his stomach, giving it shape and form. If one wanted to extinguish a flame, they need only give rise to an even more powerful inferno, by which they might overwhelm and extinguish it. Fugaku must have sensed the sudden upswing of chakra, because his eyes bulged. That's Kaden. Naruto spat, grinning from ear to ear. Goka Mekyaku. He exhaled mightily, expelling all the chakra he'd been stoking in his lungs. The great fireball found itself snuffed out, easily extinguished before the rising inferno as it roiled forward. Into Fugaku. The elder Uchiha had just enough time to realize his folly before the blaze overtook his position, swallowing him whole. No. His mind railed against this sudden turnabout, fought the realization, the knowledge that he had more than severely underestimated this newcomer, this descendant of Uchiha Madara. Pain. Fugaku's last sight was of the torrent of flame rushing towards him, his last smell that of charred flesh, his own flesh. Then the black of unconsciousness took him. Tab 3. Chapter start. In a distant land, a long, long time ago that would, in the future, be called the elemental nations, there were two beings of godly power. One, a man that would later be called the god of shinobi, was a person who utilized chakra to its finest. He was the first and true wielder of the Rinnegan, and the greatest seal master in history. The sage of six paths, the Rakuto Sennin. The other was a being of pure power, maliciousness, and hate. It was said he used all the evil in the world as his source of power. Hell-bent on destruction and death, the Jubi were fighting, one to save the world, and the other to destroy it. What a fight it was! Mountains were torn asunder and recreated, seas rose and fell at their command, islands sank and rose, rivers dried and recreated. Pure power was flying around with all the destruction of a hurricane, and the population avoided the area, hell-bent on not getting caught in the fight between two gods. After days upon days of fighting, sustained on nothing but nature chakra and his own chakra, the sage finally managed to subdue the deadly beast with his skills. He was going to seal it within himself, making him the first Jinchuriki of a Biju, and the most powerful of them all, the Jubi. During the process of sealing the beast within himself, the Jubi thrashed, resisted, and fought with all of its weakened might, but it failed when faced with the sealing prowess of the sage. Within its death throes, the Jubi screamed, with all its hate and rage. Curse you, Rakuto! Curse you and all your descendants! May they all know rage, anger and fury. May they know vengeance. They shall never know peace, not while they still live. And when I came back, I will crush them and feast upon their souls. The Jubi screamed out in rage towards the sage. Such a thing will not happen, Jubi. I will seal you within myself and seal your body in an unreachable place, forever stuck in limbo, the sage said while continuing the sealing calmly. Curse you. You will not be able to hold my power for long, mortal. A human you are, and all humans shall die. And I shall be free. It's true that I will die. That is an undeniable fact. But I will do everything I can to make sure you will no longer be able to harm the world. No more. Curse you. Curse you. And thus the Jubi's power was sealed within the sage himself, and the body within the moon. He fainted right after the sealing, and was in a coma for an entire week due to the sheer strength and willpower needed to seal the Jubi. In the years that followed, the sage traveled the world, spreading his teachings on the use of chakra and showing his jutsus to the people. People were so amazed of his power they considered him a god, which the sage denied with all his heart. But alas, the power of the Jubi was too powerful to be contained. It started damaging him from the inside. After a couple of years, he decided to do something that he thought would help prevent the Jubi from waking up forever. He split the power into 9 parts using his jutsu, ninja arts, creation of all things. Each part got a certain trait of the Jubi and a different number of tails which represented their power, 1 being the weakest and 9 being the strongest. He treated the 9 new Bijus with love, like he would treat his 2 sons from his union with his wife. She had died from old age, unlike the sage himself who'd lived for hundreds of years by that point. But sadly, it was too late. The sage's body was too damaged to heal, even with all his godly powers. After a couple more years, he was on his deathbed, and sent his will to his sons, one of which would create the Senju clan, and the other the Uchiha, which both would later be known for their prowess in the ninja arts. After his sons left, he spoke to the 9 Bijus. All of you, Shukaku, Matabi, Isobu, Son Goku, Kokuo, Seiken, Shumei, Yuki and Kurumi, each of you, a part of the Jubi that I split. Here is something that I haven't told all of you yet. During the